There's an order to everything, even in a training facility. That includes snipers. First, your eyes. Second, your finger. Then your breathing. And finally, the target. So, the trigger. Afterward, one of the sergeants holds the target in his hands and asks the protagonist, "You knew you hit every shot, didn't you?" Again, the protagonist replies, "I could feel it as I was shooting." Then he asks his buddy, "Are you organizing the ammo crates?" The sergeant in the cap, while carrying the crates, asks how many shots Raleigh missed, and if he had ever missed before. The protagonist questions, "Wouldn't it be stranger if he did miss, considering he practices every single day?" As the two converse, the sergeant asks his comrade, "Was the young man confident he'll do well?" But he has doubts. He'll be facing veterans after all. Although he says he'll do his best. The sergeant tosses the box to Ra, who tries to catch the ammo box securely, but he can't. After the protagonist wakes up, face flushed, looking at his companion. Badly wounded. The ammo box had exploded. Upon hitting the ground, terrified, his comrade frantically calls out to him. The young man cries out, "Life has deceived me." While recovering in a hospital, multiple news reports showed coverage of an explosion that had occurred at a military base. A special forces sniper was critically injured in the blast. Questions arose about the disorganized state of the ammunition depot. Its disorganization was highlighted as a potential factor in numerous unsolved military accidents. These accidents remained unresolved. However, the protagonist urges everyone to remain calm and to avoid getting upset. He explains he's the one facing the ordeal of undergoing reconstructive surgery. Urgent, with countless reasons to give up. Lera says that on days filled with sadness, he must remain steadfast. Saying this, trembling, utterly drained of strength to even walk, believing that one day joy will come, collapsed on the ground. He whispers that one day his heart will revive, even though his present is filled with sorrow, and his struggles are painfully clear to his family. He trusts that this phase will pass, and having endured this, he grows stronger each time. After this, the protagonist dreams he's in a place engulfed in flames, as despair takes hold, and fiery hands reach out trying to capture him. The young man is bewildered. Then a hand reaches out, pulling him from the depths of despair. To safety, he gasps, believing he's made it. But as he looks down at his legs, a horrifying realization washes over him. His legs, they're gone. Sweating, consumed by terror, he recognizes the agonizing truth. He's lost his legs. He can't accept it. However, a gentle hand touches his face, and then a woman's face comes into view. She asks if he'd be willing to make a contract with her. A contract that could allow him to walk again. Trembling, he questions her, desperate for hope. "Can you really make me walk again?" The protagonist decides to make the deal. His hand reaches out, slowly meeting hers. He jolts awake, heart pounding. The young man's cousin! As if he was having a nightmare. The protagonist, still irritated, tells his cousin to go to hell. He had startled him with a helmet. The cousin asks Lyra if he's tired, because he didn't even notice he'd been moved. After finding himself in some kind of machine, the protagonist asks, "What is this thing?" The young man replies, "It's an immersion pod for virtual reality games. I installed it while you were sleeping." But the protagonist is getting angry. His cousin bought something for him without even asking. The cousin tells him not to worry, because the protagonist's mother asked him to buy the pod. And it costs around 10 million hon. This outrages the protagonist. How could you even have that kind of money? His cousin replies that he bought the capsule along with his aunt. Looking at Lara, he explains that his cousin has been depressed since the accident, leaving him unable to hold down a job. However, the protagonist ignores his cousin's opinion, telling him to shut up and accept what he's been given. His cousin asks him, "Wouldn't you like to walk again?" At that moment, the protagonist remembers his dream, because his cousin said something identical to what he had dreamed. Then the young man says, "This will make me walk again." And he asks him to log in. Quickly. The protagonist, frightened, asks what the young man is doing, and what he means by login. However, the system announces to Lyra that voice authentication is complete. This leaves the protagonist even more confused, while the system notifies him that he's being logged in. He's propelled into some kind of lobby. He looks around, wondering if he fell out of the sky and where he is, but he quickly realizes he's standing on solid ground. After that, a bright light shines in front of him, forcing him to shield his eyes. An AI character greets him, welcoming him. She then said, "Blessings be upon you. You are in Middle Earth." At that moment, the protagonist senses something is amiss. He wonders why he feels a breeze, and then he questions why he's naked. The girl replies that male adventurers, specifically from East Asia, always strike this pose. She's seen it countless times. She tells him not to worry. He ponders her words, then asks if she's a goddess. The redhead replies, "Not bad at all," holding the planet in her hands. She asks what name he'd like to use in his new life. The young man thinks it over. He realizes she's asking him to choose a name. The protagonist says he'll use his own name, Ralera, and he'll keep his original appearance too. The character then says he could still change his weight, and even his race. She asks if he truly doesn't want to change anything. The boy replies that it wouldn't be necessary, because this body feels like his original one. It feels like having his own legs again. He says that he wants to experience walking in this world. The girl says she understands, extending her hand to the young man. Well, she congratulates him on taking his first step in this world. A note, changed Terra Media to this world, as context suggests it's not specifically Middle-earth, and wishes him success in achieving all his desires. After being sent to the world below, the girl says she will await their next encounter. Then, the protagonist starts falling again, plummeting faster and faster towards the ground. He closes his eyes, bracing for impact. He opens them, and is stunned to find he hasn't landed. Looking ahead, he realizes he's in a small village. There's a fountain, a flag, and a few people milling about. He wonders if it's all some kind of game. Focusing on his hand. Oh, he says, this is my character. Then the girl asks if he's truly satisfied with his own appearance, even though he could change it. The protagonist replies that he doesn't need something, like a filter for a selfie, because he likes who he is. The character asks him where his self-confidence comes from. Lara imagines he just wants to feel that way again, still thinking he looks the same as when he could run. Then he raises his leg as if to kick the air, imagining he couldn't do that in the real world, but that he could run whenever he wanted in this place. Thrilled. He thinks about how happy he is here, since his legs can move. However, someone questions if he's really moving. Turning around, the protagonist sees a guy saying he's seen a lot of people in the Castle of Light, but he'd never met an adventurer quite as naive as this one. The boy starts to wonder if this guy might be someone specifically assigned to help adventurers acclimate to the Middle Land. He observes him closely, thinking he might be an NPC, a non-player character. The young man then asks what it would take for the brown-haired man to help him in the Middle Land. The man replies that the boy is full of energy and eager to help. He says that first he needs to explain a few things. The man asks the protagonist, "Hey, do you know that a human can't run without stopping? Because if a person doesn't rest, they won't be able to run anymore." The young man wonders if he's talking about this girl. Since the protagonist seemed to have understood that part, the man continues explaining. He points toward a girl. The blonde man tells the protagonist to go over to her and interact. With her. The young man looks at the girl and says he will, but asks him to repeat what he said. But before he can even go to her, the protagonist observes a scene where someone approaches the girl and ends up getting arrested for a crime. The blonde man comments that common sense also exists in this world, and that if the protagonist committed a crime, it would be natural for him to be expelled from the city. He then explains to the young man that this was what he wanted to teach him. The protagonist replies that if he were the one who did that, he would have been the one to meet that other guy's end. The blonde man laughs and says the young man learns quickly. Smiling. The man tells the protagonist to head to the northern training grounds, where he'll receive his next training session, which makes the protagonist question if this is all really just a game. The protagonist then asks if the blonde man said north while stretching. The blonde man asks, "Is it that way?" and then takes off running at full speed, leaving a trail of dust in his wake. A cloud of dust billows behind him. The protagonist starts thinking about how he's running and how his legs are moving, exactly the way he wants them to. He then remembers how much he's been suffering, unable to walk. He bursts out laughing. Everyone around him stares, confused by his sudden laughter. As he runs and jumps around, many can't understand his behavior. Even a guy with purple hair suggests that the protagonist might be crazy. After that, the system sends the protagonist a notification, informing him that he has acquired a new skill, Beginner Professional Runner Level 1. The skill's description explains that it makes the protagonist faster, allowing him, while running, to activate an automatic effect when his stamina reaches 0%. He can then run for 5 minutes without consuming any stamina, and without using any stamina, and gaining a 7% increase in running speed. The protagonist then imagines that this ability I could allow him to run for 10 minutes without getting exhausted, and decides to take it to the training grounds. Upon arriving, he encounters a portal that looks strangely familiar. There, several people are training on wooden dummies, gripping his sword. The protagonist imagines that this is the feeling he's been yearning for. The blonde man yells, "It doesn't matter. You have no talent for combat." Well, because in Middle-earth, as long as you have the will to live, the god of the battlefield will clear a path for you. The protagonist then strikes the wooden dummy, but he immediately questions himself, because his body moved on its own. Looking down at his hand, he wonders if that was the combat assistance system Observing two players training, Lara wonders if something isn't amiss. The other player's movements seem incredibly fluid and powerful. He focuses intently, visualizing a perfect strike against his opponent. He imagines this practice as reality. With sudden force, he unleashes a blow against the training dummy. The dummy explodes, splintering into countless pieces. Astonishment washes over him, as well as everyone around him. They stare in disbelief at what the protagonist has done to the straw-filled figure. A flurry of questions erupts. How did he manage to execute such a devastating attack? It was far stronger than anything they could muster. Then, the system sends the protagonist a notification. He has acquired a new skill, a beginner-heavy attack. The skill description states that he can now inflict, after charging up the power, using 130% of his maximum attack power. The skill's range is medium, and it consumes 30 mana points. With a cooldown time of 10 seconds, some of the others present ask, "How did you manage to shatter the training dummy?"
With that much force?
After that, the system notifies him again, informing him that he has mastered the basics of combat, without making a single mistake. However, the notification warns him not to be arrogant, because a tree that grows too quickly is quickly cut down. The protagonist reflects that there's nothing good about being sent away from the city, and remarks that tall trees are cut down. The skilled soldiers are overburdened. He begins to wonder if it's finally time to choose his class. At that moment, the girl reappears, saying, "I'm here again." The protagonist notes that she talks as if a long time has passed, but he realizes that not even a day has gone by. The girl explains that this happens because Koreans devour the game's content like crazy, playing all day long. She then asks which weapon Lyra would choose. She presents him with various weapons, which leaves him surprised. She then tells him that after he chooses his weapon, his class advancement will be finalized. So he should think carefully about his choice. The protagonist remarks that he heard that there were a lot of weapons, but this was overwhelming. The girl explains that some people get indecisive and take all day, which she adds would be very annoying. The young man eyes the staff, imagining what Jong would tell him to stop looking and just choose the staff. The girl asks if he's going to be an adventurer. He replies that he is. Then the character presents him with a weapon, telling him he can take all the time he needs to choose, but that he should take it. The protagonist asks if that's really a weapon. As he takes the weapon in his hand, he wonders aloud, "Isn't that a more modern rifle? It looks kind of like an M1. He adds with a thoughtful tone. He affirms his thought. The young man muses, "I guess it's not that technologically advanced after all." The protagonist admits, "I don't know the exact model, but it's a flintlock musket. Made around the 1700s, he explains. He remarks further, "This weapon was made before Napoleon was even born." The girl confirms, "You're right," she adds with a slight smile, "when it comes to weapons. You're quite knowledgeable." Examining the firearm closely, the protagonist observes it has a flint and a frissen. He then asks the girl, "Could I fire it?" "Just once," he pleads hopefully. "With it." She nods, "Yes." Several items appear before him. Gunpowder for the barrel, a steel ball and a ramrod. As he approaches the items, the protagonist wonders if this is actually happening. Ready to fire. Lyra activates the combat assistance system. He primes the pan with the ignition powder. He fills a gun barrel with gunpowder and inserts the metal ball. Finally, he makes sure the ball and powder are properly seated. Using the ramrod, the protagonist questions why reloading takes so long, and why the weapon is so heavy. The young man aims, and declares it's the end for whoever stands in his way. His effective range is 40 meters after all. Then the protagonist fires. After that, he questions the excessive smoke. As the smoke slowly clears, the protagonist notices the target is completely untouched. Stunned, he wonders how he could have missed at only 40 meters. The girl asks if he wasn't listening to the weapon's description. She explains that muskets only have a 50% accuracy rate. At 40 meters, he requests another shot. He carefully pours the priming powder into the pan. He then fills the barrel with more gunpowder and rams the lead ball down the muzzle, making sure the powder and ball are firmly seated. He uses the ramrod to finish loading the musket. His meticulous reloading process is completed in 61 seconds. Collapsed on the ground again. The protagonist questions, I doubt if that thing was actually meant to be used. The girl asks him if 1 shot per minute isn't generous enough for beginners. After that, he asked, what other long-range weapons are there? She then shows him a training compound bow, with an attack damage between 15 and 30, a range of 50 meters, an attack speed of 15 shots per minute, and requiring 10 strength and 10 dexterity. It's made from animal tendons. Easy to load, but difficult to draw. Next, Asura presents a training longbow, with attack damage between 19 and 38, a range of 65 meters, and attack speed of 12 shots per minute. With the requirements of 10 strength and 10 dexterity. The bow's description mentions it can shoot very far and is very powerful, even when used with minimal force. There might even be a small bonus effect when wearing green clothing. Finally, well, she shows the training crossbow, which has an attack damage between 30 and 60, a range of 30 meters, and a speed of 7 shots per minute. The requirement is 10 strength, 10 dexterity, and bolts. It's easy to use once the user gets used to reloading the bolts, making the crossbow's power unmatched. After looking over the weapon descriptions, the protagonist remarks, this isn't so bad. He then asks why she would be so cruel to all the gun lovers out there. Observing the training musket's stats,
The training musket.
he notes its attack damage. He's 293. Range, 40 meters. Attack speed, 1 shot per minute. And the requirements are 0.10 strength, 0.10 dexterity, gunpowder, metal bullet, and ramrod. Its description reads, every shot is a life. Either your opponent's or your own. The young man then exclaims, to hit is to live! And to miss means the elimination. The protagonist asks the girl, isn't that a bit too heavy? She replies that it's necessary to balance the combat assistance system. Lyra adds that if he shoots manually, his range and accuracy will increase. The girl explains that the combat assistance system needs to be balanced. The protagonist becomes pensive, wondering if this is something the system isn't supposed to tell him, and if he has to figure it out on his own in real life. The protagonist thinks he'll have to take it one step at a time, because if he can manage 10 shots per minute or increase his range by 80%, he could inflict ridiculous damage. So he decides to log out, but the character was going to inform him that he couldn't log out, not during class selection. This leaves him confused. She tells him he can only leave once he's chosen his class. The protagonist yells, demanding to be let out, but she repeats that logging out is only possible after choosing a class. He starts to wonder about the reasoning behind this. This whole thing, he suspects it's designed to prevent players from figuring out which class might be the most advantageous. He considers the situation incredibly realistic. He starts thinking that maybe he won't be able to adjust the reload speed. But then he realizes he's not just here to have fun. He's also here to make money. He's torn between the option of 1 shot per minute with a 50% accuracy rate, or choose the musket with its super high attack damage. After pondering for a moment, he decides to say goodbye to the musket. The AI asks if he's given up on it, suggesting he chooses between the wand or the staff. Holding the staff in his hands, he confirms that this will be his weapon. Next, he's thrown into an endless spiral.
Snapping back to reality.
He hears someone calling his name. Are you all right? His mother asks if he's feeling unwell. He replies that he's fine and asks what happened. Holding the power cord, his mother explains that he looked like he was in pain, and that's why she did what she did. She asks again if he's okay. He confirms that he is, asking her to use the call button to size him up. Later, after his mother leaves the room and lets him rest, the protagonist lies there, lost in thought. He imagines he could actually make money playing this game, though as long as he chooses a good class. But then he remembers he was forcibly logged out, and what the girl had said, that he couldn't log out while he was in the class selection screen. He wonders what happened to his class choice. The system responds, informing him that he was disconnected due to a power outage. And when he logged back in, he ended up becoming a druid. The system further mentions that he'll need to wait between 3 and 6 months to create another character. This leaves the protagonist in despair, questioning what just happened. He sounds distraught, absolutely convinced that he had chosen the staff. Then everything would be fine. And when he logged back in, he'd be a mage. Resolute, he logs in, staring at the system screen, dejected. He yells out, I'm just a weak musketeer. A few people nearby, taken aback, ask, is there even a musketeer class? Frustrated, the protagonist shouts that he has no choice, and that he'll have to be a musketeer. He's not stupid enough to delete his character and wait 3 months to start all over again. However, the system notifies him that he's gained some new skills. Curious. He decides to check out what new abilities he's acquired. The first one is called Musket Mastery. The description states that the user becomes more proficient with a musket, and the more it's used, the better the user's accuracy and reload speed become. The second skill is Bayonet Advance. It says the musket must be equipped with a bayonet, which will be used as a last resort to attack a downed opponent, someone on the ground. The protagonist thinks that if he misses a shot, he'll have to attack with the bayonet. Shortly after, someone approaches the protagonist, we're explaining that his job is to get to know. We are adventurers who have just acquired a class. Lyra then asks the boy to stop talking and tell him what he needs to do. The blonde-haired man replies that he needs him to hunt some rabbits. A mission is then given to the protagonist, called hunt for the ferocious rabbits. He'll have to hunt rabbits that have been sighted beyond the walls of the Castle of Light. The system asks if he accepts the mission or not. The protagonist says he'll try. Moving on, the protagonist spots a rabbit. The rabbit. He says this will be his first target. The rabbit, confused.
Watch it.
The protagonist, fumble with loading the weapon. As he aims, the protagonist thinks he needs to control his breathing. When he fires, he concentrates, focused on the need to hit the rabbit. Quickly, the rabbit leaps, dodging the shot. Amidst the smoke, the protagonist wonders if he actually missed, because it shouldn't be possible. The rabbit's eyes glow brightly, and the protagonist wonders if he actually missed the shot before he can even process what just happened. The rabbit starts running straight towards him at an alarming speed. He realizes he needs to reload as fast as possible. He tries to spin the gun in a circular motion, attempting to somehow chamber around amidst this bizarre situation. The protagonist imagines he might be finished.
What?
Reloading. He tells himself he needs to run first. Glancing back, he thinks he's put enough distance between them. But before he can even finish the thought, the rabbit is upon him. It closes the distance in a flash. The rabbit winds up for a kick and with a powerful strike, sends the protagonist flying. After that, some people approach the young man, wondering if he's run out of mana. The rabbit attacks. The protagonist thinks he's lost half his health, but believes there's a way to turn things around. Determined, he grabs his weapon and charges towards the rabbit. The rabbit, confused by the protagonist's sudden aggression, is quickly struck. He goes flying, bracing his weapon on the ground. The protagonist reflects, shooting. No, it isn't the only thing a gun can do. The rabbit doesn't give up and attacks again. The protagonist defends himself, using his weapon to strike the rabbit once more. But in a flash, the rabbit's back. He aims a kick straight for the protagonist's face. The rabbit's foot connects with Lyra's chin. He feels the full impact. But Lyra challenges the rabbit again and whacks the animal on the head with the butt of his rifle. Are the warriors watching this? Question if he's really trying to kill the rabbit when he has a gun. After the battle ends, the protagonist declares that he's finally captured the rabbit that gave him so much trouble. Exhausted, Lyra can't believe he missed the shot and asks if that's what it means. You gotta gamble your life with every shot? The protagonist, flustered, explains that monsters with a lot of health aren't defeated with a single attack, and laments that, as a musketeer, he has to face monsters in hand-to-hand combat. Observing a girl, he thinks the system is definitely discriminating against this class. Leia decides to find out just how realistic the system is, asserting that he can't be defeated by something so idiotic. Then, he starts researching. He realizes that a bullet's velocity and its trajectory are affected by several factors. However, he claims he can calculate the effective range net to fire. With that, he notes that the weapon has a smoothbore barrel, which makes things more difficult. Seeking more information, the protagonist concludes that the trajectory coefficient should guarantee a range of 350 meters. But the wind will be his biggest problem. Have mentions that with the loot, the combat assistance system, I can fire one bullet per minute with 50% accuracy. Confused, the protagonist wonders if using the gun as a club might be his best option until he becomes more proficient. Meanwhile, his mother appears and asks if he's studying. Approaching him, she asks if he's feeling any less sad. Lyra responds, yes, to which his mother remarks that she should have given him that machine a long time ago. As she leaves, she tells him to get a good rest, and the protagonist replies that she can go to bed first. Lost in thought, he realizes he needs to completely dedicate himself to the game. No more wasted time worrying. He needs to make money, even if he can't be a lawyer or a judge. He vows to be a musketeer and earn a fortune. Looking down at his legs, he thinks that if he can save 20,000 gold, the equivalent of 20 million, he'll be able to walk again. As he enters the game, the other characters are startled. Was that a gunshot? They wonder aloud. But then, they realize it was Lyra. What's he doing? They murmur amongst themselves. They speculate if he's casting some kind of spell on the weapon, sweat dripping from his brow. Lyra thinks that shot was 3 seconds faster. However, the other characters start to make fun of him, saying it took him a whole minute just to reload. They remark they could have caught 2 rabbits in that amount of time. They question how anyone could survive. Like that? The redhead comments that the protagonist will probably uninstall the game soon. The blonde girl agrees, saying her colleague is probably right, because Leah wouldn't be hunting, since she's just shooting at a wooden board. After that, the protagonist stops and thinks that it went exactly as he calculated. He realizes he can see the target from that distance, and figures there must be a way to increase his accuracy, considering that must have an incredibly destructive force. Analyzing his status window, the protagonist reflects on his resources. He has 23 bullets and leftover gunpowder. He imagines using it all in real combat. And so, he spots a rabbit and thinks he can take it down with a single shot. Hidden behind a bush, he calculates the distance to be 130 meters, and the wind is blowing west. It's approximately holding up a leaf. He realizes the wind is in his favor. The rabbit suddenly senses something's there, but the protagonist decides it's time to shoot. He fires, and amidst the smoke, he believes he hit the rabbit. However, it fixes him with a sinister glare and reveals a bruise where the bullet struck. Again, the rabbit lunges at the protagonist, who becomes furious. He shouts that he needs to stop missing. After that, Lyra fires again, and this time he succeeds. He celebrates hitting the rabbit. You're from 100 meters away. This fight earned him 3 achievements. An F achievement, a C achievement, and the third put him in the Hall of Fame. He became the 3rd person to ever accomplish this. The protagonist reflects that, since he obtained 42 points from the achievements, he wonders if that shouldn't make him 8 levels stronger. A moment later, he becomes indignant when he realizes the musket's flint
was broken.
He wonders if the piece is disposable. Spotting another rabbit, Lyra asks him to let her shoot in peace. Reactivating his brute force mode, he confronts the animal after tangling with the rabbit again. Other warriors question why he's using a firearm as a melee weapon instead of shooting. Sitting on the ground, the protagonist wonders why it's easier to crush them than to shoot them. Shortly after, the young man receives a level promotion. Other players approach to congratulate him,
Passing by a group of people
who are gossiping about him. Lara considers finishing his quest, stocking up on some items, and getting in more practice. Upon completing the rabbit quest, he receives a rabbit skin backpack. After that, an old man asks him if he's all right after facing those rabbits. Ferocious ones at that. The protagonist replies that he's more or less okay. The old man then asks if he could face the rabbits again, but the protagonist refuses the offer. Next up, the protagonist receives a notification that he's completed the quest. Hunt the ferocious rabbits. This mission earned him 50 copper pieces, 10% familiarity with all the NPCs,
Of Light's Castle?
and 15% familiarity with the gods of the Light Castle. And so, the protagonist mentions he still needs 19,999 gold pieces, 99 silver pieces, and 50 copper pieces. After that, Leah goes to a place where someone might be interested in buying rabbit meat. He announces that he has the meat. Madame Rue comments that she hasn't seen such high-quality meat in a long time. Then she asks Leah, note, assuming Lyra is a typo for Leah, as if she can pay 7 copper pieces per rabbit. Hearing this, he thinks it's a good price. She also asks if he could help her out at the restaurant. The young man asks what he would need to do, and Bruce explains that since she sells meat, she needs him to acquire more for her. At this moment, our protagonist already suspects he's about to face another quest. A quest window pops up, requesting that he help create a new dish for the Holy Grill. Madame Rue, delighted with the rabbit meat, explains that she needs dark rabbit meat and to complete her dream of having the best restaurant in all of Middle-earth. Her dream restaurant. The mission, deliver 5 pieces of regular rabbit meat and 1 piece of dark rabbit meat. And 1 of dark rabbit meat. The reward, a new special dish cooked by Rue herself. Before accepting the quest, the protagonist pauses, lost in thought. He imagines that, as long as it ends successfully, it will be the start of a series of quests. He asks what's so special. But black rabbit meat. The woman takes a deep breath and explains that apparently, there's a black rabbit among the ferocious rabbits, known for its exceptional flavor. But she hasn't had the opportunity to try it yet. Holding the protagonist's arms, Rue explains that if he hangs the pouch on a tree near the south gate, its scent will attract the other rabbits. However, he'll need to hunt them at night. Since they don't appear during the day, she threatens him, saying not to come back with something bizarre. That's because she doesn't take kindly to people disrespecting her foot. Terrified, the protagonist promises he won't mess anything up. Rooks affirms that he'll be waiting for him. After that, the protagonist mentions that he needs to buy gunpowder and ammunition. Arriving at a shop that sells weapons and armor, an old man informs him that black powder costs 10 copper pieces per pack. Primer powder is 5 copper pieces per pack, and each iron bullet costs 3 copper pieces. He calculates the total to be 1 silver and 26 copper pieces. Hearing this, the protagonist questions why it's so expensive. He thinks the NPC is ripping him off. The old man then replies that it's because there aren't many. Musketeers. Indignant. Lyra remarks that musketeers have to pay to win, since he's playing fair and square to earn money. The old man replies, if you think that's expensive, you can try the unstable gunpowder. Furious, the protagonist complains, I'll never make a profit hunting rabbits like this. This is absurd. He questions, Why do I need to eliminate them again? Am I a musketeer or just a useless fool? Lost in thought, the young man concludes, if I don't have enough bullets, I'll have to face the rabbit's head on. However, he ponders, if I use that approach, the meat will be ruined, which could be my end. Without alternative, he hands over his money in exchange for 7 of each item. The old man remarks, well, if you find anything interesting, you can take it to the shop. The protagonist then asks if the old man needs any help. The old man retorts, what kind of service could someone who complains only 7 bullets possibly offer? As he leaves, Lyra looks at his single remaining coin and mutters, I should have become a mage. Magic wouldn't cost anything. No one would look down on. So someone who can only afford 7 bullets. The protagonist thinks that maybe there are requirements to receive quests. He reflects that the vice captain of the guards gave him a mission after seeing his profile, and Hoff did the same after noticing the quality of his meat. He also thinks that he can't just accept any quest without being approached, because he needs to figure out the NPC's requirements. After that, the protagonist is perplexed by what he's feeling. He wonders if the system actually created hunger. A notification informs him that his satiety level is below 40%, and that if it drops below 30%, he'll be penalized. So Lyra wonders why he doesn't just eat some bread. To test how realistic the system is, he arrives at the store's door and asks to come in. He says he'd like to buy some bread. However, the clerk tells him they're closed. Lyra insists, saying it will be quick. She eventually gives in. He figures the NPCs even have business hours. The protagonist thinks that if that's the case, no one can buy food after sunset. So he needs to hurry as he looks over the prices, questioning why everything is so expensive. And then he turns to the shopkeeper and asks if they're out of bread, which only costs 1 copper. She confirms, explaining that they haven't been able to bake much bread lately because of the rabbits. They're eating all the wheat. The protagonist wonders if a bothered NPC would accept a favor and contemplates if he should use the wheat shortage to his advantage. Lyra decides to talk to the woman and mentions that, at the request of Vice Captain Ghiati, he's been catching some rabbits and could easily deal with them. Then he asks if she wouldn't trade them for some bread. The girl replies that he's the 20th adventurer to say that to her. Adventurer to make that offer. But she explains that the rabbits have multiplied so rapidly that she doubts it would help, with a hint of irony. She asks if by accepting such a deal, she wouldn't end up going bankrupt. The protagonist thinks to himself that she's too clever to be just an NPC. Lyra remarks that she's sure many have bothered her before, but points out that she received a quest from the owner of the Holy Grail to hunt and capture the meat of the black rabbit. The woman asks if he's talking about Angos, the black one. The black one? Smiling! She says he must be joking, and says he doesn't seem all that talented. She questions how someone skilled enough to capture Angos couldn't even afford to buy bread, apologizing for her bluntness. She tries to justify her comment. The protagonist holds up a small bag and asks her to look. He explains that Madame Rue gave it to him. Meanwhile, Leah wonders what that strange smell is. Catching a whiff of the odor, she gags. She says the smell probably comes from something made by the Russians. Still, she doesn't believe the protagonist is skilled enough to receive a quest from the owner of the Holy Grail. The girl decides to ask Lyra for a favor. She explains it's nothing complicated and suggests while he's catching the black rabbit, she could ask him for a favor, no pressure. The request involves gathering some herbs. Although it comes with a certain degree of risk, she explains there's an herb that only grows in places where black rabbits do their business. Apparently, this plant enhances the aroma of bread. But, of course, the location of these herbs must be kept secret. The mission, find 3 bouquet herbs. The reward, herb bread, and a unit of gunpowder. A grand total of 30 copper pieces. The protagonist thinks the NPCs have lost their minds. She's suggesting he risk his life for some rabbit-dropping fertilized herb bread. Leah wonders if the woman actually expects him to risk his neck. That's why. He asks if Angus, the black one, is actually the black rabbit. The young woman confirms it, explaining that he's the reason why the other rabbits are so aggressive. She clarifies that Angus is called that because his fur turns black whenever he's enraged with that. The protagonist finally understands the situation. There are comments that since she said it would be easy, he'd like to help. But the girl asks if there's something wrong with him. Smiling, Lyra replies that he's starving and that he might faint when they get there. He suggests that he'll be invigorated if he eats some bread first. The woman, intrigued, asks if he really just wants the bread. However, she questions if he's going to eat dinner and then rush off. The protagonist reassures her, saying he'll keep his promise. So she offers him another reward. A loaf of rosemary bread, some gunpowder, 30 copper pieces. and a 15% familiarity boost. How with all the NPCs in the Castle of Light? The second reward would be 3 sweet croissants. But with the cash, he would have to deliver the ingredients. Yeah, in less than 12 hours.
Before Anus Bakery opens.
If he fails, his familiarity with the bakery owner and would be weakened by 20%. And all the NPCs in the Light Castle, by 10%. So she asks if he's really going to increase the difficulty for just 3 loaves of bread. The protagonist remarks that he'd lose a lot of familiarity if he failed, and then decides to give him the bread. Lara thanks her and promises to do his best. As he leaves, the girl wishes him good luck. And the protagonist thinks to himself that this is harder than real life. Soon after, the system notifies him that he's learned the fish bloating skill.
It's currently at level 1.
The description states that it's a high-risk, high-reward skill, allowing you to risk it all for greater rewards. Additional rewards. The system also emphasizes that negotiations aren't just about shouting, but also about listening to the other side. Depending on your familiarity with the NPC, the chance of changing the terms of a trade or quest actually is about 20%. As he walks, the protagonist thinks about how he needs to complete the quest in 12 hours. Suddenly, he overhears someone looking for party members. A party.
That's also hunting the Black Rabbit.
Curious, he turns to see who's recruiting. As he approaches, he finds 3 players and asks if he can join them. However, the man with the shield asks what Liha's class is. The protagonist hesitates, but he answers that he's a long-range sniper. The girl in the group scoffs at him, remarking that his equipment is awful. This makes the group question whether they should accept him. The man with the shield states that Liha should look for another group. He examines the protagonist's boots and concludes that he's probably not even level 5. Speechless, Liha wonders if they're actually looking down on him. The group justifies themselves, saying they're worried because, if they're eliminated, they won't be able to attempt the quest again. That's why. It would be better to find a higher level player. Next, the protagonist wonders to himself about what the other players were saying, about not being able to try again if they were eliminated. If they failed, he thinks he hasn't heard anything like that concerning his own quest. Then Leah asks what the quest is about. The Black Rabbit quest they're undertaking. The girl replies that it's a hidden quest, and that it probably has nothing to do with him. The protagonist thanks her, figuring it must be a different mission altogether. After that, he concludes that everything is all right, since he's managed to gather some information. With the meat and herbs he has available at the moment, he does some mental calculations, and realizes he'll need 4 level 10 people to complete his mission. Standing in the middle of the street, he says 1 bullet per rabbit, and I still have 12 hours left. He then wonders if he should pick up more quests. Without a second thought, he accepts a mission from a tailor who needs rabbit hides, another from a weapons merchant requesting claws, and a third from an accessories vendor who needs rabbit ice. Humming to himself, he figures that besides accepting 3 more quests, he's also leveled up his skill.
He's now a beginner rabbit whisperer level 2.
Level 2! Now he has a 21% chance of changing the conditions of a trade or mission. With his musket slung over his shoulder, he remarks, time to grind levels for 4 hours? Thinking about his progress, he imagines that upon reaching level 5, a status window for his character will open up, displaying all of his attributes and progress so far. The protagonist wonders if he's been pushing himself too hard. Noticing the wear and tear on his weapon's grip, he worries he might go broke if his weapon breaks. Reaching for his backpack, he pictures it securely fastened. Picking it up, he notices something. He stands up and sees several players in danger. They shout that they're about to be eliminated. Then the protagonist wonders if these are the same players who are recruiting members back at the fountain in trouble. The players are trying to save a fallen man. In front of him, the warrior with the shield yells that the archer is down and orders the others to prepare to attack from a distance. Proto observes the battle and seeing the spells, thinks, so this is how it works. So facing the massive black rabbit, magical attacks and flaming arrows are launched in his direction. Leia watches and wonders, is that really magic? Thinking to herself, 15 to 20 seconds to cast a spell. Why, seems like an awfully long time. She scoffs, comparing it to the time it takes to reload her weapon. After another player falls, the remaining ones shout that the mission is a failure, and they order an immediate retreat. The protagonist observes the enormous black rabbit, rapidly approaching them. Lara figures that this must be Angus. He wonders why a rabbit would be the size of a bull, and decides to assess the creature. Confused, he glances around, and spots another rabbit chasing the 2 remaining players. Meanwhile, the other player is tending to the fallen one. Then, he tenses up, realizing there are 2 black rabbits. He assumes there are multiple Anguses. Yeah, and that he's got a lot of work ahead of him. Lyra continues to watch the players argue, and reflects that if a small rabbit can cause this much damage, getting hit by a black rabbit. She would probably break a rib. Desperate! The protagonist remembers he has 5 pending quests. He decides he needs to try at least once, but he imagines that if he fails, he'll lose 10% familiarity in each mission and won't be able to return to the city. As he reaches for the musket, he knows it's still a weapon, because guns are designed to eliminate with a single shot. He knows he's the best at this, since this world was made to be meticulously identical to real life. So, as he's determined to fulfill his role as a sharpshooter, he asks the system to open his status window and puts all his points into dexterity. Dexterity has an increase of 25 more, bringing the total to 55. With this, the protagonist decides to see what this will lead to. As the players are chased by the rabbits, they try to find a way out. However, the goblins notice the protagonist's presence. Lara shouts for the players to flee in another direction. He figures he only needs to increase his dexterity to level 9 to reach that level, and that his attack damage needs to be as high as possible, considering his current level. Preparing to fire. He knows he'll only need 1 shot, but he realizes that if he misses, he's done for. With the gunpowder already loaded, he just needs to load the bullet. However, the players are desperate, running from the rabbits, and the protagonist wonders if they're running towards him. Leah, frantic, asks why they're coming their way, and yells that they should be running in the opposite direction. The girl asks if he's actually gonna save them, and says if that's the case, he needs to hurry up, as she bombards him with every insult imaginable. The protagonist can't take it anymore, and for a moment, he wonders if it wouldn't be better to just shoot her, trying to focus. He decides to wait until his target enters his range. Ready. He watches as the target gets closer. The rabbit is 85 meters out. The girl continues to berate him, now with the target at 80 meters. Quickly, the rabbit closes to 75 meters, with the rabbit now dangerously close to the desperately running players. It reaches 50 meters. When the rabbit reaches 45 meters, Lyra prepares to fire, with the rabbit almost on top of the players. The protagonist says, "It's target acquired," just like that. He fires and the weapon releases a fiery blast. The bullet that left his weapon passes, grazing the girl's head, leaving her stunned. But the bullet continues towards the rabbit, striking it. The girl wonders if he's been eliminated. What in the world just happened? Glancing to the side, she realizes her partner is being attacked by the giant rabbit. As the monster mauls her ally, she finds herself trapped. The protagonist grabs her arm and demands, "What are you doing? You're supposed to be running." He warns, "If you don't run, we're next on the menu." As they flee, the girl is astonished. Did he, she wonders, take down that monster with a single shot? It's a high level, she ponders. Just who is he? She continues to question. The protagonist tries to reload, relying on her for cover. But he didn't expect his comrade to be devoured. Just like that. Lyra realizes she needs to keep her distance from the rabbit. That way, she'll have time to reload. The rabbit standing near their fallen ally lets out a deafening shriek, startling both the protagonist and the girl with the sheer volume. Then, they wonder if the monster has finished its meal. After a moment, someone appears before them. A girl with blue hair. An aura of energy radiates from her body. The purple-haired girl senses something and quickly jumps on top of the protagonist, urging him to get down. The blue-haired girl focuses power in her hand and then unleashes a volley of ice arrows. They whiz past the protagonist and his ally, and they advance toward the monster. Upon striking it, they begin to freeze its body. The girl asks the protagonist his name, but he questions why she wants to know. Charging power in her hand. She says it's to return the favor and form a party. He quickly tells her his name and the party is formed, with more and more energy gathering in her hand. She unleashes her power towards the giant rabbit. The protagonist remarks, "We finally got the monster in the end." The protagonist levels up. However, Lyra worries if the items were burned and questions why the girl is taking all the items for herself. The girl replies that she delivered the final blow. The protagonist asks where his items are. She points behind him, saying they're there, and they're all his. She asks, wouldn't that be fair? As he walks away, they're stowing some items in his bag. He wonders why the two girls are following him. The girl in the hat says, "My name is Ramwayan," and the girl with blue hair is Run Wajong. But the protagonist replies, "I didn't ask." Then Wayon asks him, "Do you know Ram Wajong, the snowflake of Hong Kong?" Stating she's incredibly famous. But the protagonist responds, "Have you ever heard of Raliha? From South Korea." The girl questions, "Who's that?" And the protagonist answers, "We're even then, because I don't know you either." Waving to them, he says, "It was nice hunting with you." Lion, still indignant, "You can't help but think something's off." She wonders how the protagonist managed to neutralize Angos with a single shot, especially since Angos had full HP. Ham Hwajong points to the side. "The bouquet herb is over there." The protagonist remembers the young woman who told him not to tell anyone about it. Lara asks, where does the bouquet herb come from? He wonders how she knew, since no one was supposed to find out. He starts to question if he failed the quest. The girl in the hat asks, "What is that?" Ajong replies, "It's a quest item." He assures her it's okay.
I can tell other players.
They remark that he seemed worried, because he thought they might try to steal the quest item from him. The blue-haired girl mentions that she saw the protagonist take down the rabbit with a single shot. Looking at him intently, she asks him how he did that. The girl with a hat asks the same question, a little awkwardly. He replies somewhat bashfully that maybe it was just luck. Then, some system screens start popping up in front of the protagonist. The first screen shows that he's received an achievement. Black Rabbit Hunter for hunting angos. The second achievement is Magnificent Shot on Angos. The third achievement was for Knowledge of Weaknesses, for knowing a little something about weaknesses. The protagonist cracks a small smile and comments that his quest is complete. After that, Ion raises a toast with his allies. Celebrating their safe return, they're safe and sound. The protagonist asks who they are. Ion explains that Ajong is ranked 5th in Asia and 9th in the world. She's a famous player. The girl in the hat reintroduces herself, mentioning that she's the fire mage, while her companion is the ice mage. The protagonist remarks, embarrassed. Fire mage doesn't seem very altruistic for someone who was just running away. Flustered, she says she can't help it, because that's her class name. Smiling, the protagonist teases her, saying it's pretty embarrassing. Ion asks what Lyra's secret is. He wants to know how she defeated the Angos with a single bullet. She replies that she simply shot, and the monster was neutralized. This response further irritates the fire mage. She demands that Lyra stop playing games, intimidating her. She asks what Lyra's level could possibly be. It must be incredibly high, she implies. Lyra questions if she really needs to answer. Adion comments that the accuracy bonus from the skill is negligible. Even with a critical hit, it would be impossible to neutralize the monster with a single shot. She states that there's no other explanation other than instant death. While they try to figure out how Lyra managed to do that, Lyra wonders how they know about her. His status and skills? They chat amongst themselves saying that to finish off the monster with a single blow, he would need to be at least level 90. As a warrior or swordsman, the fire mage asks if it would just be 90 strength point. The blue-haired girl replies that it wouldn't be strength. She looks at the protagonist and says it's level 90. In the system interface, he looks at a message, which questions, "Aren't you embarrassed to still be hunting in a beginner zone? At your level?" With that level. The protagonist reflects on the achievement's description. With that said, they give hints that they want to invite the protagonist to their guild. Then the fire mage Relira calls out to him, and she actually asks him if he'd like to join her guild. The protagonist is speechless. Then the girl in the hat explains that her companion is the guildmaster. A very famous one at that. The protagonist asks if she's serious, especially knowing he's only level 6. She replies that he can always level up. He mentions he only has starter equipment. She assures him she'll give him the best. Top-tier level 7 equipment. The protagonist asks how many members the guild has. The girl answers that there are many. She states that their guild is the 9th largest in the world. But the protagonist refuses. The young man jokes, saying that his mom taught him never to take candy from strangers. So, the fire mage asks if he's really going to let this opportunity slip away. Lara replies that it sounds too good to be true. She remarks that he wouldn't accept, even with Huajong as the guildmaster. But the young man doesn't care. She looks at Huajong and questions if he really has any idea how prestigious the guild is. However, the protagonist explains that he needs to do his own research, and that one shouldn't buy from the first shop they visit. He adds that he might come back if this really is the best place. This leaves her with a furious look. She takes a deep breath and says that if he changes his mind, and will send him a friend request. Lara replies that he can definitely accept that. She tells her partner that she'll pay the bill, and gestures for them to leave. Rayan thanks the protagonist for saving her from the monster angers, while she pays the bill. The protagonist asks if they're leaving. The blue-haired girl replies that she'll see him later. The protagonist takes a deep breath and comments under his breath, "Ice, what a unique pair from a turbulent quest." Turbulent indeed. After that, he figures it's time to collect his reward. While the woman examines the red eye, she asks if he really managed to do all that in just one day. The protagonist, smiling, replies that if there's any more work in the future, he asks them to call him. The young woman agrees, saying it's impossible not to trust him, since he captured the Angos in just one day. Immediately after, a new system notification appears. It informs him that he's completed the quest, the Strange Collector's Red Crystal Search. He gains increased familiarity with various NPCs and the owner of the Curie accessory shop, as well as receiving 90 coppers. Upon delivering the claws to the bald man, he remarks on how incredible the Angos claws are, and that he will craft excellent weapons with them. The protagonist wishes him luck. Another quest completed. the meticulously crafted dagger, which earns him 80 coppers, along with increased familiarity with various NPCs, and the owner of the ticket weapon shop.
With that, your level increases again.
Arriving at the tailor's shop, Sandy remarks that the hide
Is exactly what she was looking for. She's impressed with its quality.
She thanks the protagonist, saying it will sell well if she makes a few coats with it. As a reward, Sandy gives him a bonus.
With another quest completed, besides the reward, a luxurious black coat.
He obtains a set of padded brown armor. His haggling skill also increases in level.
Level 3, now sporting his new armor.
The protagonist remarks that his hard work has paid off. And what's more, he's earned a 15% increase
in familiarity with NPCs across all completed quests.
Arriving at Annie's bakery, he excuses himself as he enters. Annie immediately recognizes him as Leia and invites him inside. The protagonist notices she's baking bread. He comments on the wonderful aroma.
Aina says they're fresh out of the oven.
She asks if he'd like to try one.
The protagonist replies that he'd rather not spend any money.
But she counters that his response makes her sad, because it seems like when he talks about money,
he treats her like a stranger.
The protagonist jokes, stating that they really are strange.
Anne tries to put him at ease and invites him to try some breast.
She bets he hasn't even had coffee yet.
The protagonist is flustered and thanks her for her kindness.
Then she gets straight to the point and asks if he brought the herbs. He quickly retrieves them and shows them to her. Upon receiving them, Anne becomes so enamored with the herbs that the protagonist wonders if they're truly as delicious as she makes them seem.
As delicious as she's making them out to be. Following that,
the protagonist completes another quest, receiving 30 copper pieces, leveling up, and gaining an additional 15% familiarity with NPC number 6 Andon, the bakery owner.
After that,
Ayn remarks that anyone who likes bread will be addicted to the smell alone. However, the protagonist replies that it's just something that grows in rabbit droppings.
Anne doesn't understand what he means.
And asks him what he's insinuating. As the protagonist walks away, he reflects that the whole thing was strange and exhausting.
He decides to see things through to the end to resolve the situation quickly.
Soon after, he encounters Madame Rue, who asks if the rumors about him neutralizing angles
if were true.
This makes him wonder if there actually were rumors.
She confirms, saying that there definitely were.
Or
explains that the Castle of Light knows everything, including the news of his successful hunt.
Successful indeed. The protagonist asks if it wouldn't be necessary
for the boss to verify it himself.
Smiling, she says she has complete confidence in his abilities. He thinks to himself that 70% familiarity would be great. Holding a piece of meat, Ross remarks, this is the famous black rabbit meat. Thus, the new quest is completed, and he receives 50 copper pieces. Russ also states that he will give him a special reward, and asks him to wait. He's going to prepare a lunchbox for him. Lara suspects there's more to come,
and comments that it might take a while.
However, she says she can speed up the process.
Thus, a new quest is assigned to him.
To help Rue prepare a new dish for the Holy Grill, he'll need to acquire the wings and meat of the fearsome Bird of Light Mountain, the Embered Sword Eagle. The restaurant's success depends on it, and his reward will be a special Sword Eagle lunchbox, made by Madame Rue herself. The protagonist imagines he's already on his second quest. Rue affirms that Lara is capable of handling the task, since she needs Sword Eagle meat, which lives on the nearest mountain. The protagonist reflects that this must be the final mission at the Castle of Light.
It's involving the network boss.
The Sword Eagle.
He thinks that only from level 10 onward
is it possible to access the Castle of Light's final quest. Lara questions if the reward is only a lunchbox.
And if that's all the Holy Grail has to offer?
Who replies that Castle Light is a remote city. She explains that she really needs the Griffin's meat to open a second shop in the capital. The protagonist asks if the meat is absolutely necessary to open the new shop. Ruiz replies that to achieve great things, you have to take risks. He adds that he knows exactly what she's trying to say. Then Liha finally understands and concludes that she needs the Griffin meat for that. However, the protagonist imagines that the game developers have already implemented corruption into the system. With the bribe ready, Rue warns him, which makes him wonder
if all the rewards are going to be food.
Quickly, the protagonist focuses his gaze intently on the lunchbox. So then, comments that it must be the Excellent Angus Special Bento Box,
the black one.
This lunchbox will make him stronger, with permanent effects.
+1 dexterity and +2 concentration.
While he celebrates, Hux explains that it's no ordinary lunchbox. It's actually a rare item, ranking 3rd highest in item rarity. Lara then imagines that the +1 ring costs 5.5 million won. He thinks he could sell the lunchbox for at least 3 million won. Excited, he considers selling it. However, as he examines the lunchbox label, he notices a peculiar detail. The item is non-tradable. This frustrates him, since he can't sell it. But he also notices there are no attribute restrictions, like there are with equipment. Hux commends him, saying he did a good job. Embarrassed, the protagonist admits it's the best reward he's ever received, but he thinks there's nothing he can do. Still, he considers the immense gain and concludes that he needs to stay humble.
Because life can end in the blink of an eye. If he's feeling particularly confident and decisive,
He declares he'll take the mission immediately. He salutes Rue with a crisp, proper soldier's salute, leaving the restaurant. So he reflects on the quests he's completed and decides to open his character window.
the system shows his class is still musketeer.
His level is 8. He notices he's already earned a few achievements, and that he has 6 identified weaknesses. He then realizes that he needs to reach level 10 to unlock the next missions. Missions? Meaning he has to level up twice more. Furthermore, he'll be able to leave the beginner's town once he hunts the sword eagle. Thinking about the delicious smell from the lunchbox, he decides to try some.
Meanwhile,
A few people watch him eat. He's astonished and wonders, how can this be so delicious? Even praising the recreated texture of the meat. As he eats, he considers the possibility of hunting the Black Angus, the black one, several times. But he thinks it's time to level up. Seriously determined to hunt, he opens his inventory. What he sees makes him nervous. He realizes he needs to buy bullets again, because he only has 5 left. Grumbling,
he comments that the GMs are sucking all the musketeers dry.
after that, he returns to the shop, figuring that, with his increased familiarity, maybe the gun shop owner will give him a discount. Upon finding Tickle, the protagonist says he's come to buy some gunpowder. While the old man is lying down, the protagonist thinks to himself, they're so lazy, they can't even greet.
Someone properly.
He wonders if Tickle's behavior isn't rather rude, even with a 70% familiarity rating between them.
The protagonist tries to speak,
But the old man cuts him off.
Tickle, asks if he's planning on buying 8 packs, since he's wearing new clothes, and wouldn't buy just 7.
Besides, remarks that 1 pack costs only 18 coppers. The protagonist mentions the price hasn't changed.
However,
The old man questions why it would have changed since the last time. Suddenly Tickle turns and asks why the musketeer class even still exists. Musketeer. The word makes the protagonist realize he seems to be the only musketeer in town. He figures that even if he spent all his money, he could only afford 37 packs. But he needs to keep an emergency fund. To start, he asks for 23 packs of ammunition. Opening his bag, he tries to calculate how much money he has, but wonders where all his money went. The old man comments that his finances must have improved somewhat
to be able to buy 23 packs, Tickle approaches the protagonist. He asks, "What is that smell?"
wrinkling his nose. He sniffs the air, trying to pinpoint the source of the aroma. Lyra mentions that he ate rabbit earlier, but the old man shakes his head. That's not rabbit. His eyes widen. It's driving me crazy, Tickle exclaims, still sniffing. His intense expression makes the protagonist nervous.
"Back off," he says, a little uneasy.
Then Tickle's eyes light up. It's bread. However,
He adds, "This is no ordinary bread." This makes the protagonist glance at his backpack. He pulls out a loaf of bread.
it's magnificent Wake herb bread, he announces proudly.
The old man can't believe his ears.
Herb bread, he repeats in awe. He practically drools, desperate for a taste,
And offers 50 coppers.
but the protagonist replies that it's not nearly enough. Lara says he risked a lot to only accept 50 measly coppers.
He then offers 1 silver. But the protagonist insists on 5 silvers.
The old man complains that it's highway robbery and the protagonist, smiling,
Yahello says that that's all right.
still smiling. He activates the skill. Increase. The chance to persuade by 21%. The other party. The protagonist remarks, many say that Wake herb has an incredible flavor, that I fell silent. He is, which makes the young man wonder if he failed. However, unable to resist, Tickle asks if the bread is hard to come by.
With that,
The protagonist imagines he's landed a critical hit, smiling. He asks how much Tickle thinks it's worth. Tickle suggests 2 dishes, but the protagonist replies that he'd rather just eat the bread.
The old man tries another offer.
But Lyra insists on 5 silver pieces. Changing tactics,
The young man proposes 100 rounds of ammunition.
this causes Tickle to call him a thief. The old man starts trembling and pleading. He offers 70 rounds. The protagonist accepts the offer,
But asks that Tickle introduce him to the gunpowder maker.
after much talk and negotiation, the old man agrees. Back in reality, the protagonist celebrates, exclaiming, "That was epic!" He adds, "Just saving on ammo costs would be a huge help." He declares, "I'll work hard. Oh, at the rich and take care of my parents." Regaining control of the game, he decides to check some quests and item prices. While eating, the protagonist notices the television is covering news about Middle-earth. On screen, a breaking news report appears. Evidence suggests the ice witch Hanwha Chong's has appeared at the Castle of Light.
teeth in one of the beginner villages. The reporter clarifies, this isn't just about the Ice Witch, but also about the eldest daughter of the CEO of the Hamlong Group,
The second largest financial group in Hong Kong.
Furthermore, from Hua Yong was reportedly with her. The protagonist, watching the news report, remarks that the Rumlong Group is one of the wealthiest companies in Hong Kong. The reporter adds that they were there to recruit a certain
User,
Korean, a witness. Claims they were struggling, claims they were having difficulties.
This outrages the protagonist.
That's a lie, he exclaimed. Who's struggling, he demands, already knowing that the Korean user
is him. The protagonist starts to sweat, muttering.
At least nobody saw my face. However, beads of sweat begin to form on his brow even more intensely upon hearing the user possessed a long firearm. He panics and collapses to the floor. He figures he's screwed, staring blankly at his computer screen. He wonders what exactly he's looking at. Checking the video's information, he notices it already has over 1.8 million views and 72,000 comments. The protagonist remarks that it was posted only 2 hours ago. He reflects on how someone this important had an escort, reasoning that this person must be high-ranking. Maybe even one of Korea's top 10. People are questioning why a high-ranking Korean would join a Hong Kong guild. As he reads the countless insults directed at him, he begins to sweat and tremble. He remarks that at least he's glad people believe that his beginner's items were all just an act. With his hands on his head, the protagonist acknowledges that the Ramlong Group is famous, but says he doesn't have enough information about this guild, and that if he were to join them, it would be easier to level up. He recommends that even though Huayon seems to hold a grudge against him, that would only happen if he refused his offer. Therefore, he figures he'll have to level up a bit more when he returns to the game. The protagonist finds the old man and hands over the fox pelts that he had requested. With that, he completes another mission called Intelligent Beasts. He grants a 10% familiarity boost with all NPCs, 50 copper coins, and a pair of ordinary leather shoes. However, he notices his level hasn't increased. As they talk, the old man gives the protagonist a new mission. He mentions that there aren't many people with the liar skill. The young man asks if he'll have to hunt wolves. This makes the old man question how he knew. Determined, the hunter declares that he will capture them. The system notifies him of the new mission, informing him that a wolf pack has ascended the mountain, forcing the foxes to flee into the town. Therefore,
He must eliminate the wolves.
so that peace in Light Castle can be restored. With the screen still open, he's surprised to see he's won a free weapon repair voucher. A free weapon repair as a reward. The old man comments that the young man is looking a little worse for wear himself. Looking at the path ahead, he imagines he could get his worn-out crown fixed. Determined, Lyra says he'll be back, and the old man tells him to give it his all. The protagonist reflects that this would be the perfect place to build a team. However, he wonders where he can find a party. He'd been told this part of the game would be difficult for a level 8 player going solo. He explains that by joining a party, he'll be able to work in a group and have time to reload. If the shot misses, according to him, it would be as clear as day. Holding his weapon, Leah expresses her concern about the possibility of the wolf pack being composed of 2 or 3 wolves together, and deciding to focus on those who are isolated. Ready to begin his hunt, he thinks about the 10 foxes he eliminated, which used up 13 ammo packs. 71 packs remain, and he calculates that he'll finish the wolf mission with 11 shots, being able to use the rest to upgrade his weapon to level 10, and then go after the water sword while crawling, pondering where he might find the wolves. A protagonist hears someone shouting. Looking around, he sees a young woman urging a warrior to take position. Her companion replies that he will draw their attention. He deduces that this must be some kind of hunt. Witnessing the ensuing battle, with abilities like a powerful stomp, magical incantations, energy blast, and preemptive healing, our protagonist is completely stunned. With a tinge of envy, he remarks, those wolves are getting wiped out pretty easily. Turning away from the scene, he tells himself to stop being so envious and go hunting. But right there in front of him, he spots a wolf. It stares back with a sinister gaze a good distance away. He figures it's time to show the results. I took off his training. First step, tear open the packet with his teeth. Second, load the gun with gunpowder. Third, blow. Then tap the gun and finally aim. With a slight smile on his face, the protagonist feels grateful to his commander for being able to complete all the preparation in under a minute. After all, he had learned this method from a TV show, which included the commander's advice. The importance of controlling his breathing. Properly. Doing as he was taught. With controlled breathing, Lyra fires, landing a precise shot. Seeing it fall,
The protagonist remarks.
That was easy. I got one.
But another wolf appears immediately after. Observing the ferocious wolf that emerges before him, the protagonist grips his weapon tightly, trying to pinpoint
Where the animal might be hiding.
However, he knows his musket isn't very durable. He's running low and needs to avoid a close quarters fight.
Grabbing his ammunition pouch.
He figures he only needs a minute to perform the same ritual.
Bite, pour in the powder.
Earblock and Ram.
Now desperate.
He shouts that he just needs to aim.
Quickly.
However, Leah notices something that puzzles him. He wonders why the wolf isn't charging towards him, watching the wolf change direction with a slight smile and sweating nervously. He figures the animal is avoiding his line of fire and that it's possibly figured out his weakness. Leah thinks that if the wolf moves to the left or the right, he might miss the shot. Either way, he wonders if he should back away until he loses sight of the animal. However, he dismisses the idea because he still needs to retrieve the wolf's loot, the one he just eliminated. Resolute! Sucks, he realizes it's all or nothing. With a confrontation imminent, the massive wolf lunges at the protagonist. He pulls the trigger, and with the shot, a thick cloud of smoke explodes around him. Quickly, the bullet grazes the wolf.
Terrified.
The protagonist exclaims,
Thank goodness I hit it. Relieved that he managed to wound the wolf.
even if it was just a graze. Kneeling beside the wolf, he remarks, almost that the animal had reacted
To the fake gunshot he'd simulated with his mouth.
but that he was aiming between the wolf's attacks.
The protagonist.
I wonders to himself, was I stupid or clever? Just then, the skill, musket mastery, levels up to level 2. Looking round, he wonders if there are any more wolves nearby. As he approaches the wolf's body to loot it, someone approaches him. They ask, how did you do that? With a smirk, the protagonist looks to the side and asks, is that another player?
However,
Well, he realizes it's a man, accompanied by a raven and a monstrous figure. Panic sets in, but the green-skinned character says, don't worry, they're not monsters. They're players just like us. The giant figure pleads, Lara, don't shoot! Terrified, Lyra remarks, that looked like a lizard man. And a giant. Something he'd already seen on the official website. The protagonist turns his back and walks away, muttering,
I thought they were monsters.
However, the lizard man calls out, wait! The protagonist tries to explain himself. I thought more monsters had shown up, he stammers. The lizard man replies calmly, it's all right. Plenty of people have mistaken us before. Plotting something. The lizard man asks, are you hunting alone? And are you really strong enough to take down 2 wolves with a single shot each? Witnessing all of this, the protagonist wonders, why do they seem so strange? With a sinister look, the lizard man suggests, why don't you join our party? Since our levels are similar. With all that said, the protagonist finds the whole thing pretty unnerving. As they talk, they question why all the wolves were in packs of 3, especially considering they were only level 9, which made them tough to face. Looking at the protagonist, the lizard man remarks that it takes him a full minute to reload his weapon, which would leave him vulnerable if multiple monsters attacked at the same time. This makes the protagonist think they were being observed. Looking back at the lizard man, the protagonist wonders if he's right. After all, he'd been lucky so far. However, he reflects that he's almost at their level, so he's got nothing to lose. With a smile, Lyra asks if it would be a problem that he's only level 8. Hearing this, the lizard man is surprised. He questions if he's really a level below them. However, the lizard man says it doesn't matter and invites the protagonist to hunt with them. The lizard man explains that his giant friend will act as both tank and healer. The protagonist thinks that the party seems well balanced. Smiling, he introduces himself to the group, stating his name. The lizard man says his name is BM, the poison mage, and the giant introduces himself as Ding Gong Gong, who is level 9. Question pops into our protagonist's mind. He asks what class the giant is. Something feels off. Because ding! Oh, it sounds incredibly familiar. This makes Gong Gong nervous, especially when the protagonist notices a crow perched on Ding's head. Then he recognizes him. He exclaims, that's the druid famous for the blackout, pointing at him accusingly. Lyra adds, he's the giant who became a druid because of the power outage. This startles Singh. He asks, are you a Korean player? The young man replies, I'm the one who shouted. That I'd go bald. And run around the fountain 10 times. In response, Gong Gong, a little embarrassed, says he only managed 9 laps. Ding, with a dejected look, he remarks that he's used to all this, as he's even received donations out of pity. Bum in turn reveals that he's from Vietnam. While the protagonist analyzes the composition of his group, made up of a tank and a healer, a damage overtime mage with poison attacks, and him slow, but with powerful attacks. He figures it's a good formation. However, Lyra gets nervous about potentially being the main source of damage. Joining hands, they decide to give it a try. Thus begins a peculiar part where the members pitied one another. Is formed immediately after Dingo orders his raven to attack with pecks. The protagonist starts trembling as he readies his weapon. Meanwhile, the poison mage gets into position,
ready to unleash his venomous spit.
as BM confronts the wolves. The protagonist grips his weapon, his hands shaking. He finds the whole situation utterly bizarre and almost bursts out laughing.
Aiming at the wolf.
Lyra focuses intently. She knows she can't miss. A single mistake would mean losing a precious minute. Ding tries to protect himself from the wolf attacking him, but the animal is precisely struck by a shot from the protagonist. However, another wolf lunges ferociously at Ding with a ferocious blow. The wolf is struck, and the poison mage finishes it off with an attack. But what they didn't expect was another wolf lurking just behind them. Another wolf appears, finger on the trigger. The protagonist fires, hitting the beast dead on. Reflecting on the situation, he wonders if that qualifies as teamwork. Suddenly, he receives a system message pops up informing him that his musket mastery skill has reached level 3. The poison mage congratulates Lyra on the level up.
With a smile?
The protagonist expresses his thanks. He says he only managed it because of BM's efficiency. BM remarks that it's because Lyra has incredible attack damage, while Gong is a sturdy tank, pleased with the compliment. The protagonist replies that the mage is really good at socializing. Lyra announces that she's finished gathering the quest items and asks if they can quickly return. With everything gathered, Sam hollers that finishing the quest right then would be pointless. He suggests that the protagonist wait until he reaches 89% experience and level up upon reaching it, because then he'll be able to take on the Eagle and Sword mission.
Furthermore,
All three of them could tackle the Eagle and Sword together without wasting any time. Determined, they raise their hands, committed to leveling out like crazy. Meanwhile, two people are talking. The girl in the blue hat remarks that weird thing is back again. Suddenly, Ding lets out a loud yell and once again engages in a battle against the wolves. The two women who were chatting, they're left wondering what he's doing. Meanwhile, the mage appears from behind, unleashing poison upon the wolves. Seeing the protagonist firing out the wolf, the woman with the staff remarks that she's never seen a musketeer before. Observing the scene, she comments that they're eliminating the beasts quickly. She further mentions that although they seem strange, they also appear to be quite capable. She questions if the party's composition is truly effective. Once again, the mage neutralizes some wolves, swiftly taking them down with his venomous spit. Meanwhile, the protagonist comments that despite their odd appearance, they're a strong group. Then Gong praises BM, saying he's truly incredible. Jing asks the mage how he manages to cast spells while walking. Smiling, BM replies, I just kept trying until I got it. The giant compares it to running while holding a glass of water without spilling a drop, which makes the protagonist question if something like that is even possible. Lost in thought, the protagonist imagines that Jung also does this while walking, which would explain why she holds the 9th position in the world rankings. If in the world. Suddenly, his eyes widen in alarm, and he wonders if the poison mage is using the same technique as someone from the top. She's 10 in the world. After that, exhausted, Imam comments that they did a good job, and asks Gong, how much experience do you have, Gong? Gong replies that he's at about 69%. The lizard says that even though Gong can take on the Sword Eagle quest upon reaching level 10, it would generally require being at level 12 or 13 to defeat it. The protagonist reflects that he had read that it would require being level 14 with a 4-person party. Or level 12? With a 5-person party. However, he thinks the mage wants to confront it. Once they all reach level 10, as they climb the mountain, Lyra wonders if the three of them, even at level 10, could actually defeat the Sword Eagle. Bia asks the protagonist if they should continue. With conviction, the protagonist replies, yes, but he admits to himself that he's overly worried. He then mentions he's at 88% experience, so raising his weapon. He says he's used up all of his bullets. Gong mentions he's at level 10, with 28% experience, remarking on how difficult it is to level up. The mage says he's also at level 10. With 42% experience, and suggests they take a walk around town. Lyra, lost in thought, he notices everyone is close to level 10. The protagonist agrees to the suggestion of taking a walk around town, believing that everything will work out for them. Upon encountering the old man, it informs them that he found the wolf pelts. The old man remarks that the protagonist's share looks a bit odd. With his system screen open, the protagonist realizes he's leveled up and is now level 10. However, something surprises him. By completing the quest, he reached 100% familiarity with the Light Castle Guards. Furthermore, he earned an achievement and became an honorary member of the Castle Guard because he faced the hidden boss, Angus the Black. After that, several people start whispering. questioning what just happened. Could that have been a level-up visual effect? The system also notified everyone that the protagonist's continental reputation had increased by 30 whole points, while his national contribution to the Phoebial Kingdom
Skyrocketed by 100.
as he starts to leave. His allies call out, asking him to wait for them. Later, sitting in the grass, the protagonist comments that he attracted a lot of attention for being in a beginner's village. The mage replies that it couldn't be helped. The mage adds that it's likely, no one has ever seen someone gain so much reputation so quickly. And then, questions how the protagonist managed to achieve 100% familiarity. Surprised, the protagonist asks how he knew that. The mage replies that it was all over the internet, smiling. The protagonist asks if that information is really on the internet. But in his thoughts, he wonders how the mage actually found out. The lizard-headed man asks the protagonist if he believes that, even after completing all the quests, he would only achieve 60% familiarity. With a smile, the protagonist scratches his head and replies that, honestly, he doesn't know either. However, he reflects that it was worth all the hard work, facing various anxieties by completing various related quests and using his haggling skills. The protagonist comments that he did some other things too, while completing their level 5 rabbit quest, and thinks that might be why. He then asks if other NPCs offer quests as well. At that moment, the giant notices the mage acting strangely. He asks if he's alright. The mage replies that it's nothing, while they're sitting down, and wonders how the protagonist managed to defeat Angus, the black one, while still being at level 5. Elsewhere, back in the city, the protagonist doesn't like what he sees, because he finds the packages too expensive. He figures that if he uses a specific method, he can complete the task using only 40 packages. While talking to the old man, the bearded man tells the young hunter he has another quest to deliver. In a hurry, the protagonist asks if it's the sword eagle. The old man, surprised, remarks that this was expected of an honorary god. Quickly, Lee asks him to hand over the mission. Immediately, the old man, dissatisfied, wonders if the young man has always been so impatient. Then he gives Leah a new quest, called Leader of the Mountain of Light, which explains why the wolves have come down the mountain and how the waters have led other animals to make this place their home. The mission, obtain an eagle feather and the sword. However, a new message informs the protagonist that he won't be able to increase his familiarity with the god of the Castle of Light. He figures it must be because he's already maxed out his familiarity. He wonders if, instead, his national contribution will increase. With that in mind, Lyra asks if everyone's picked up the quest. The giant says he's already fed his pet raven, while the mage confirms he's ready too. The protagonist calls out, towards the great mountain. As they leave, he overhears a heated conversation. They're complaining about failing again. Apparently, their group's tank died. However, they're debating whether to wait for him to reconnect, even though they know it'll take 48 hours in real time. The healer, clearly irritated, says they should have just ignored the wolves. They weren't even worth the experience points. But the mage, panicked, argues that they were chasing the... The archer cuts in, saying they should have run, but then blames the mage for leading the wolves to them. Watching the whole debacle unfold, the protagonist mutters to himself, "What a bunch of pathetic campers." Miserable. As they walk, they continue to overhear the group's heated discussion. The protagonist starts thinking about forming a new party instead of fighting alone. Moments later, a man shouts for everyone to grab their items, as several people are buying and selling goods in the area. Some are offering HP buff potions, which grant a 30% increase for 10 minutes. Seeing the commotion, the protagonist remarks, "This is quite a chaotic marketplace." Smiling, the mage comments, "Parties with poor composition, at least need to have good items to compensate." Gong, in turn, your boss says that, our party isn't exactly the most ideal either, composition-wise. Lyra reflects, "The group that fought before us, he consisted of 4 people, but the tank's down." Even so, he looks pensive, wondering if they'll be okay. The young hunter asks if they should join a full party. BM laughs and asks who would want to join such a strange group, and everyone's level 10. The protagonist reflects that he'll need to at the very least, he reached the boss to use his method. Lizard tells him not to worry. BM asks the protagonist why he chose such an ugly character. Confidently, Lyra figures her friend Lizard has a plan. Suddenly, a portal appears before them. BM asks the protagonist to take care of him. BM likely refers to a character's name or nickname, but the one who truly pleads for protection is the young hunter. Soon after, Ion, or capitalized for potential character name, panics and shouts that wolves are charging towards them, quickly closing in. 3 massive wolves leap in their direction. Ajong jumps in front, assuming Ajong is a name. Urging his ally to move, a frosty mist begins to form in his hand,
And he conjures a barrier.
swiftly in front of the wolves. Ion gnashing her teeth. Capitalize Ion for potential character name. Demands to be allowed to finish off the wolves. However, her ally advises her to conserve her mana, since those creatures don't even give experience points. Ion, frustrated, questions why she can't use her mana. She asks her friend if she's trying to show off because of her high level. Ruachong responds, Ayo, saying that's not even 1% of her mana, and that she can carry her easily. After that, Ion comments that Ruajong makes everything look easy. Her friend replies that she needs to be the one to deliver the final blow. Determined, Lion plants her feet firmly on the ground and declares she'll finish this quickly. Soon after, large birds appear before Wyon, assuming Wyon should be Wyon. Wajong, assuming Wajong is a character's name, urges her to conjure her most powerful magic. The red-haired girl questions if her magic will reach the target, even from this distance. As he begins to summon his ally, he tells her to just begin. Aijong then starts to invoke a powerful magic. An intense energy surges and crackles around his body. The magic flows stronger and stronger, forming a swirling vortex of power.
Nearby eagles now circle above her, their eyes locked on the spectacle below.
With a fixed gaze, Jong unleashes his blizzard power to its full extent. The blizzard rushes towards the bird, savagely striking its wings. The impact sends the bird plummeting down towards the ground. Nearly defeated before Ruong, Chuk asks Ruong to... The lightning bolt finishes off the bird and bids farewell, saying there will be more later. Meanwhile, the lightning bolt unleashes a fiery arrow at the bird. After that, the protagonist steps through the portal and the system notifies him, announcing his arrival at the Mountain of Light. Suddenly, the lizard man asks Gong,
Do you possess the one with nature skill?
Gong replies, yes, but I can't use it in combat. The mage asks when he'll be able to use it. While the protagonist observes the conversation, he begins to wonder if BM truly understands the abilities of other classes. Soon after, the lizard man tells the protagonist to simply follow him. With a smile on his face, he assures him, you'll understand soon enough. Confused, the protagonist wonders what BM is planning. With a sinister look, BM activates his venomous spit ability, seeing him coat himself in poison. The protagonist wonders why he's doing that. To himself, Obi then asks Jing Gong to use his skill. But one with nature. He orders the protagonist to stay behind them. Still confused, the young man asks if the wolves won't attack them, covered in poison. BM asserts that the wolves won't be able to get close to them, and that the young man will see for himself. As countless thoughts race through the protagonist's mind, he wonders what the lizard's plan is, since they'll have to cross dozens of wolves leading all the way to the eagle sword. Suddenly, a massive wolf appears in front of them. The protagonist shouts, startled that the beast had just appeared out of nowhere. Frightened, the protagonist watches as BM tells him to wait a little longer. Then the protagonist sees BM walk near a bush, where several wolves are lurking. He yells out, "What are you doing?" Moments later, BM stands before the pack of wolves, but the wolves only sniff him. They don't attack. This leaves the protagonist confused and frightened by what he's witnessing. He asks BM how he did that. Meanwhile, BM replies that it went exactly she says the mage had planned. He explains that the protagonist needs to understand just how realistic the AI is, and that the GM's developed by observing wolves. He says that the animals see them as food, but wouldn't eat something that could kill them. Then he mentions that as a lizard man, he possesses a high resistance to poisons. BM explains that thing seems like a tree because of the one with nature skill,
while the protagonist is masked by the scent of his poison.
The protagonist reflects that his ally took full advantage of his racial resistance and imagines that he has a good understanding of other classes' abilities. He concludes that BM is playing the game by exploiting loopholes in the system. Seeing the crow, the protagonist asks if it's part of the scenery. However, Gong asks his master to take the crow with him. Seeing this, our protagonist thinks everything is ruined. The wolves are still there, staring them down, looking at Corvo B. AM shouts for the giant to cancel the spell. Quickly, cancel the summoning. As the summoning is cancelled, the wolves turn their full attention to them. The mage, who had been calm, starts to sweat, admitting they're in serious trouble. The wolves quickly surround them. Our hero realizes there are at least 20 of them, and he's sweating too. Gong apologizes. Admitting his fault, he offers to take responsibility, telling the others to run. While he distracts the wolves, Corvo B thanks him, but Ding replies it was nothing, because it really was his fault. He tells them not to. Don't worry about him, and suggests they find another tanker complete the quest. Leaving, Ding says he'll see them after the 48 hours. Faced with this situation, the protagonist thinks he can't just abandon him like that, especially after they've hunted together for so long. Meanwhile, Gong asks them not to ignore him. When he sends a DM reassures Ding telling him not to worry about it. At that moment, the protagonist remembers that the AI is realistic, but thinks that if he can find a flaw in the system, something might change. Suddenly, he has an idea. He asks Gong to wait. But the giant replies that if they take too long, the wolves might attack them first, and he doesn't want it to end that way. The protagonist then asks if it wouldn't be shameful to be separated. Like this, with a smile on his face and holding his gunpowder pouches. The protagonist declares they've walked together, and if they're going to be taken down, it will be together. While Lyra loads his weapon, Bea asks if he has a plan, but she points out that the musket can only hit one target. Seeing Lyra prepare his weapon, the mage wonders what he's doing, and why he loaded 2 gunpowder pouches at the same time. Observed by the wolves. Bea, note, assuming this is a character's initials or a sound effect left as is, comments that Lyra hasn't even loaded the bullets yet. The protagonist replies, that's exactly right. His weapon is ready. Lara announces, it's time, and urges his allies, cover your ears. He fires. A massive cloud of smoke and fire erupts from the muzzle of his weapon. His allies are left deafened and bewildered by what he's just done. BN asks why Lyra chose to act so decisively. Without hesitation, Lyra yells, now's our chance, run! A startled Bea. Sema questions. In confusion, why are we doing this? Gong points towards the wolves. Why are they running? He asks. The protagonist replies, I'll explain later, just run. As they flee, the mage asks, what kind of trick was that? Leha replies, I just tried something different. He explains, this strategy is much quicker than using poison. So something natural. After running, the wolves are left stunned by the cloud of smoke. Exhausted, the protagonist asks, did we finally lose those Gong animals? He believes the wolves are no longer chasing them. Trying to understand what happened, Bea asks, how did Leha do that? With wide eyes, Bea questions, was it the smell of gunpowder that threw off the wolves? The protagonist explained, that only worked. It is because the game is hyper-realistic. He adds, that even.
People can't stand the smell of gunpowder.
So he bet it would be even worse for wolves. While reloading his musket, Lyra reflects on how happy he is for having used only 2 powder charges, since he was afraid the battle would burst. BM, impressed, praises Lyra, saying he's incredible and possesses a wealth of knowledge and also belongs to an interesting class. After that, the mage asks if Lyra has ever played Middle-earth. The protagonist is taken aback by the question. He replies that, in fact, he's currently playing Middle-earth. BM confirms that he's right and invites him to continue. The protagonist remarks that he finds the lizard suspicious. Before leaving, Gong asks to summon the raven quickly and a little awkwardly. He asks his allies to look away. The request leaves both the protagonist and BM confused. They ask if there's some kind of skill that can't be seen. BM says he's never heard of such a thing, but Gong explains that's not the case. He's just embarrassed to use a particular skill. With a mischievous glint in his eye, the protagonist asks to see it. Gong, trembling all over. He says he's too embarrassed to do it. However, he decides to perform the summoning in front of his allies. And quickly,
he begins the ritual to summon the raven.
Suddenly, a colorful ball appears behind him. Then, his allies burst into laughter, mocking him, asking what the hell that was all about. Still trembling, Gong explains that if he doesn't do that, the summoning won't work. Completely embarrassed, he starts making some movements and says that worshipping nature is a conjuration requirement for a druid. He claims the summoning needs to come from the heart. Hearing this, Bea asks if it's really necessary to make those movements for the raven to answer the call, mocking him. So, the protagonist comments that the raven is a bastard, with tears welling up in his eyes. Gong says the raven of misfortune is level 10, smiling. The protagonist says that now that the raven has been summoned, they can continue their mission, walking towards the towering mountain. The protagonist remarks, it's finally time to face the boss. After that, back to the mission. A massive bird soars overhead. Isn't that an eagle? The protagonist asks. Leia wonders if this game only cares about size. How could that be an eagle? She questions. The rabbit we fought was the size of a bull. Just then, he spots an eagle the size of a glider. Looking at these eagles, he figures the smallest ones must have at least an 8-foot wingspan, and the largest one must be at least 4 times bigger. Unimpressed, figures she must be at least 10 meters tall. BM calls for a quick review. He asks if he explained the pattern. Gong confirms, saying he made sure to study it. The lizard says she'll start with a dive attack. He explains that if the eagle grabs the protagonist's arms, they'll be ripped off. This makes the protagonist wonder why this game is so violent. Then BM continues, explaining the next attack will be the sonic attack. The bird will land on top of the tree and scream at them. He warns the protagonist again that if he takes the attack directly, he could be stunned. And in that state, Lyra could become eagle food. The protagonist is frightened and wonders if he'll be eaten alive. Gong asks if they need to inflict maximum damage while the eagle is perched in the tree. BM explains that once the eagle's health drops below 30%, it'll be unable to fly, and it'll have to fight them on the ground.
He also says that at that moment,
Gong should inflict damage by any means necessary. Shake the tree trunk. Let's throw a rock or anything else.
BM
Volunteers to distract the smaller birds. However, the protagonist says there's no need for that. He just asks to be allowed to shoot the boss. The lizard asks if he really wants to shoot first, and the young shooter replies that he does. Then the lizard comments that the safest strategy would be to deal with the smaller birds first, one at a time, while the protagonist aims BM. I asks why he intentionally wants to shoot at the most dangerous option. Gung, observing the eagle's distance, he questions Lyra if he can actually hit it. He replies that he'll try. So, the protagonist asks if 90 meters is good for them. BM, fuming, asks if 90 meters is a joke to him. Ding asks Lyra if he can really estimate that distance. Then the protagonist asks BM to be ready in case he misses. He also asks Dingon to crouch in front of him, so he can rest his weapon on him. Gong does, as the protagonist asked, leaving the young sharpshooter feeling a surge of satisfaction. As he lines up his next shot, he visualizes the eagle soaring at an altitude of between 95 and 110 meters. He calculates its ascent and descent, estimating a fluctuation of 2 to 3 meters. With each powerful beat of its wings. However,
he thinks it would be easier.
this bullet were a little faster. With steady breaths, he imagines everything is in place. The protagonist concludes that to hit it, he'll need to aim where it's going, and he fires. Immediately after, he yells to his allies that he hit the target and tells them to prepare to cast their spell. When the eagle falls to the ground, but he's confused because multiple system screens start popping up. The protagonist remarks that it couldn't be an achievement. His allies are overjoyed, since the target was taken down with a single shot, leaving even the protagonist bewildered. With the screen still open, the protagonist questions how that was possible. The system notifies him that the leader of Light Mountain, the Eagle Sword King, has been eliminated. Leah also obtained an eagle feather, and with all of that, his level increased. In addition to his skill, musket mastery evolving to level 4, the system also notifies him of the achievement. Subjugator of the Light Mountain King. It informs him that by subjugating the Eagle Sword King, the beasts attacking Light Castle will return to the mountain. Gong, quite cheerfully, tells the protagonist that this is his second achievement, and that it granted him a considerable stat boost. He smiles and replies that he's also happy. BM questions if this is real. Obtaining the achievement with just one attack, the protagonist thinks he needs to retrieve the Eagle Sword's meat before the dungeon closes. Next,
The system notifies him that he will be exiting the dungeon.
automatically, in 30 seconds, the protagonist realizes he's received 2 more achievement notifications, and that the eagle meat has been stored. The achievements include Magnificent Shot on the Eagle King, and Sword and Sniper etymology. He figures he must have made the shot while the eagle was ascending around 100 meters up. After the portal appears, Gong calls out for them to leave the dungeon. Again, he receives another achievement. He was the second player to achieve Sniper etymology. Looking at the system screen, as he sees that the first 3 people to achieve this accomplishment are recorded in the Hall of Fame and receive a 200% bonus to their stats. About to go through the portal, the protagonist thinks about the Hall of Fame, while BM asks if he collected the loot. Loots likely should be loot. After leaving the dungeon, each one of them comments that they're graduating. Gong ha aumentado dos ossos. This phrase is unclear. It might refer to a sound or notification upon leveling up. Needs more context, assuming it means a notification regarding stat increase. The notification pings as all their stats increase by 1. Someone remarks that it felt like a graduation quest, but he says he hasn't gotten any achievements since reaching rank F and 100%. Familiarity. Hearing this, the protagonist, wondering if the rewards for I rank, they weren't, a little too generous. Still indignant, she asks the protagonist, "How did you manage to do that?" The mage leans in and whispers to Leah, "That monster he just took down, it wasn't just some random small fry. It was a boss." Confused. Yes, is something wrong? It shouldn't be a bad thing to finish quests quickly, right? BM replies, "Completing quests quickly isn't the main point here. At your current skill level, that should be impossible." The lizard man exclaims, "That was a boss!" He explains that even with multiple DPS at their level, it would have taken a long time to defeat it. He then asks the protagonist, "Did you use some kind of buff?" Smiling, the protagonist replies, "You all saw it." But in his thoughts, he admits he didn't think he could hit it either. Not like that, not that bad. Still in disbelief. BM questions if it was truly a critical hit. A little sheepishly, the protagonist admits he got lucky. He didn't think he'd neutralize the boss with just one shot. He remarks, if I could do that every time, I'd already be level 50. However, even the protagonist starts to wonder how he pulled it off. Such a feat, and he says nothing. But he's visibly lost in thought as someone comments on this, saying they've never heard of anything like it happening before. Gong smiles and says he feels like he's won the lottery. Leha reflects that the first motto of a sniper is to make sure no one even knows he fired a shot. He fired a weapon. He notices that even BM is reacting with surprise and decides he will always keep this motto in mind. After that, elsewhere, the old craftsman tells the protagonist that he was correct in his judgment and thanks him. Therefore, the system notifies him that he has completed the quest, King of the Light Mountain, and that his national contribution to the Fikbiel Kingdom has increased by 30. Furthermore, he leveled up, then died, holds out a letter explaining it's a recommendation to the Brown Bass Musketeer Academy. Brown Bass, located in the capital, considered the best academy on the continent. Once again, the protagonist receives a system message stating that he's obtained a letter of recommendation to the academy and 90 coppers. Then Lyra wonders if Brown Bass isn't the name of a musket used by the British Empire. The old man believes that the academy will help further sharpen the young sharpshooter's vision. Hearing this, the protagonist starts wondering what artistic weaknesses the old man was referring to. Lost in thought, he remembers he possesses a title called Knows a Little About Weaknesses, and deduces that maybe that's what the old man was talking about. Dieter calls out to him, so he places a hand on his shoulder and pulls him into a hug, thanking him for everything. He asks Lyra to become a great person for their kingdom. Smiling, Lyra realizes this is about more than just reaching 0.100% familiarity. He feels grateful for the affection. Afterward, some players comment on whether NPCs can actually give hugs, mentioning it would be the first time they had seen this to happen. Meanwhile, our protagonist, in turn, finds himself feeling a pang of longing for the army. Later, they begin to discuss their plans. From that point on, Gong announces he's heading to the Emerald Forest. It's the next destination for druid training. BM says he's going to the Tamba Jungle, which is near the Emerald Forest. Jalera declares she's off to the capital, though there's still some uncertainty if her name is actually Yahello. The giant remarks that that's a shame, since our group was invincible. Smiling, BM asks Gong if he'll go with him, or if he's sad about only having BM for company. Jing replies that he's happy, because at least BM will still be with him on the journey. The protagonist then says it's not like they'll never see each other again. He tells him to stop being so sentimental, since they're friends. As he leaves, the giant tells Leah to be careful on her journey. Smiling, the protagonist tells him to work hard and level up. He says they'll party together again someday. And so, the protagonist is alone once more. With that, he decides to open his status window. He checks out his achievements, which include Magnificent Shot and Sniper Etymology. He also sees that he was the second person to earn the Sniper Etymology achievement. Looking at the screen, he wonders if he truly is the second person in the world to achieve this feat. Opening his character status window, he thinks this must all be a dream. Even though he specialized in dexterity, his strength and intelligence are already over 30. Looking at his screen, he noticed he gained a total of 114 status points, thanks to achievements, titles, and consumed food. And he still has 40 points left over. So, he wonders if he should leave those points unassigned for now. For the time being, he decides to check out his new skill. With his Tranquil Squirrel Heart, beginner level 1, he can use it while aiming at a moving target. The skill allows him to become calmer, and the calmer his heart is, the less his hand will tremble. Seeing this, he thinks the skill seems a bit complicated. He muses that it would be great if the 3-second and 30-minute durations was reversed. Another skill notification pops up. The Beginner Musket Mastery passive is leveled up to level 4. It allows him to become more familiar with the musket. The more he uses it,
This results in an improvement.
inaccurate and reload speed. Reloading. However, the protagonist considers the 0.5% increase per level to be quite low. It's too slow. While clearing the system notifications, he tells himself not to be so greedy. He's sure it will improve as to train even harder. Thus, he concludes his priority is to finish his quest. Arriving at a certain location, he greets someone and encounters Madame Rue. Quickly, she asks if he was successful in his hunt. He confirms, but requests that his titles not be mentioned, and that she not get too close to him. She asks why he was so fast, and if he's trying to deceive her. Smiling. Ohad replies, asking how he could do that to his benefactor.
She smiles.
Happy that he thinks that way. But in truth, the The protagonist
Thinks his real fear was ending up becoming
barbecue. She's fascinated by the tenderness of the eagle meat and the swordsmanship.
She quickly hands him a silver coin.
Saying she'll prepare a meal for him to take away. She asks him to wait, but remarks that he hasn't yet met her beloved. She explains that he was sad because Lyra didn't greet him last time. She says that while her beloved was sharpening a knife, he mentioned wanting to meet the young man because he seemed like a rare individual. However, wonders why her beloved would be
sharpening a knife.
if he wanted to meet him with a trembling voice. He replies that he definitely will meet him. So she decides to call for him. She says the protagonist is there. Suddenly, he appears, shouting, "The meat is ready!" The protagonist is terrified, wondering why he's being called meat with a peculiar expression.
The man grabs the protagonist's hands.
And remarks that this meat is incredibly tender and high quality. This sends chills down the protagonist's spine. He thinks the blonde man also should be saying that about the meat.
The counter.
Not to him. Then the man hugs him tightly and thanks him, saying he can't believe someone would give him such high-quality meat. Quality. But our protagonist is completely bewildered. With a sinister look, the blonde man declares there are no bad people among meat lovers. The protagonist, even more terrified now, pleads to be released. The blonde man then asks if Lyra would like to learn how to cook. Stunned, the protagonist asks if he means cooking as a skill, because a production skill appears on the interface. He thinks there isn't a chef class, since classes are usually combat-related. Although he doesn't mean to disparage production classes, Lyra recalls that some people choose the warrior class to become blacksmiths, and that he'd heard it could be quite profitable. Facing his Russian comrade, he wonders if cooking would be considered a basic skill or a production skill, since related skills include butchery, agriculture, and fishing. You imagine being able to learn two production skills, and you consider it advantageous to learn profitable skills, or skills that could help in combat. Then you remember Angos's lunchbox, the dark one, Madame Roos, which wasn't negotiable. And you think about the possibility of selling food that could permanently increase someone's stats. Your mind made up. You accept the proposal. The blonde-haired man comments that it was an excellent choice, and explains that he will condense all the content into daily cooking lessons for you. He adds that he'll make sure you settle in Lyria, not understanding.
You asked what he meant.
The blonde man clarifies that cooking is creativity, but to be creative, you must first master the basics. Thus, a new mission of daily cooking lessons with Chef Guillaume Guerrero. This is offered. However, the mission warns not to expect to gain Master Chef level skills in a single day. So, the protagonist has the option to accept or decline the mission. Worse, he comments on how difficult it will be to learn everything in one day. But the protagonist thinks that because it's a game, probably, he'll be able to learn everything in a single day. Next, the chef asks Leah to help him and explains that the fastest way to learn culinary arts is all about cooking. He declares that he'll drill this lesson into the protagonist through hands-on practice, of course, confidently. The protagonist replies that he'll try. He begins chopping the ingredients. Lara remembers his time in the army barracks and all the cooking he did there. He figures simple dishes shouldn't be a problem for him, especially considering it would just be days of hard work.
Nothing more.
A moment later, Yumivka asks why he's hesitating. He explains that when skinning, you need to make the thinnest cut possible, starting with the white flesh. He presses Lara, asking what he's doing, complaining that the meat is going bad. The chef sarcastically asks if he should cut off his own finger as a demonstration. A flustered Gio unleashes a harsh critique, scolding that trying one's best isn't nearly enough. He demands Lyra redo the dish properly, because not even a dog would eat what he's prepared. Growing increasingly irritated, Gio orders someone to fetch a cleric, hoping they might still be able to salvage and somehow cure the raw rabbit meat, completely regretting his promise to teach Lyra to cook. The chef vents his frustration, lamenting that if he could go back in time, he'd cut out his own tongue to avoid making that promise. Meanwhile, the protagonist, frustrated, wonders if he could just shoot the NPC. But he quickly reconsiders, wondering if that would lock him out of the game. After this tense moment, Mifigar decides to try the meat Lyra prepared. Seeing the chef's reaction, the protagonist thinks he'll be shot if his food is rejected. And in that case, he'd be out of the game. However, the Gyo is surprised by the outcome, declaring the food is good. He remarks that the young man managed to learn in a single day and attributes this to having an excellent teacher. After that, the system notifies the protagonist that he's learned the cooking skill. This means he can now use ingredients to prepare food. Losing his patience, the protagonist reflects on having to endure the entire day and decides to stay calm at that moment, then thanks the chief for teaching him. At this point,
His vitality is below 30%, and a negative effect has been applied. Madame Ru asks if he's leaving already. He replies that he is, but mentions he still earned a buff. She then asks him to take a lunchbox with him. Ru places the lunchbox on the table and, smiling, says she'd like to ask him for a favor. He immediately imagines a new mission is coming, feeling a bit intimidated. Intimidating him. She asks if he'll accept, smiling. The protagonist replies that asking him to accept something without giving him any details about the proposal
Is cheating.
and she comments that he thought they were closer. The system then notifies the protagonist about the mission, which is a delivery to the second Holy Grail restaurant. The quest, deliver the letter and the lunchbox, are good in 1 month. The reward is an invitation to the grand opening of the second Holy Grail. Failure conditions include not completing the delivery within the time limit or failing to protect the lunchbox. If this happens, the consequence will be a 50% reduction in familiarity with Madame Ru and 20% less familiarity with all the NPCs at the castle of Light. The protagonist questions why a simple this delivery mission wouldn't be easy and wonders why the reward is so low. He asks her, is that all? She replies, yes. But the protagonist persists. Does Madame Juju like to eat people? Or does she live in a dungeon? Irritated, she retorts, are you insulting my sister, who lives peacefully in the capital? He presses on. What's so hard about this? She answers, guess people. The world isn't a peaceful place, she explains. Are there bad people after this lunchbox? The protagonist asks, that I am holding? She remarks, look, there was a case of an adventurer who was neutralized. It could while trying to protect the Holy Grail lunchbox. Immediately after, she says she was joking, but our protagonist is nervous. He can't help but wonder if she might be telling the truth. He calculates that the capital is about 500 kilometers away. Even if he walked 24 hours a day for 7 days straight, it would take 10 days. He remembers the roads are in bad shape and that the journey won't be a straight line. So he estimates it will take at least 15 days. And if he has to climb a mountain, it could take over a month. Despite all of this, he decides to go, since the Musketeers Academy is also in the capital. He admits he doesn't know what might happen, but he feels he must complete the mission. He accepts. Fox thanks him and hands him 2 lunchboxes. For safekeeping, she adds. He asks if the food will spoil. She replies that they're protected by a preservation spell, and that they'll last, on average, 3 months. With a sinister look, Madame Ru confirms the food won't spoil. But once
It's that he won't be able to preserve the flavor.
for that long. She asks if he'd like to ruin her dream of opening Holy Grail, too. Tense, he replies that he would never even think of it, with the lunchboxes in hand. Ru wishes the protagonist good luck, and so a strange and dangerous mission begins. A short time later, the protagonist starts eating one of the lunchboxes. He comments that the stat boost is even better than Angos's lunchbox. The black one, no. This likely refers to a black lunchbox. Consider rephrasing contextually as the black lunchbox or describing its appearance more clearly in previous subtitles if possible. Then the system informs him that the special lunchbox is rare and non-tradable. After finishing the lunchbox, the protagonist remarks that he could get rich if he could produce and sell something like this, holding the other lunchbox. He says he's very curious, because it seems like something made for bribery. He speculates that it must be even better than the lunchbox. He just ate and wonders to himself, why haven't I looked at the item description yet? Upon checking the description, he discovers the bribe lunchbox is unique and contains the other Holy Grail recipe. When opened, all creatures who breathed will be subjugated and become slaves to Madame Ru. It's described as the only legal drug in the kingdom known as the Holy Grail barbecue, with an expiration date of 180 days. The item also offers a 20-point increase in stats. Surprised, he remarks that on top of all that, the item is also tradable. Yes! The protagonist starts looking around, thinking to himself, this is a one-of-a-kind item, and wondering what kind of item I could offer a 20-point stat boost just by consuming it. He wonders how much he could sell something like that for. So, Radha decides to consult a price chart and reflects. 1 gold is equivalent to 100,000, despite being a rare item.
He compares the movement speed boost
Of plus 15%. The dexterity bonus of 6, and remembers that a one-handed sword can cost up to 14 million won. He considers that Madame Ru's lunchbox. It doesn't have any class restrictions and doesn't even need to be equipped. It's an extremely powerful item that increases stats just by being consumed. He concludes that this item could be sold for a fortune. Even so, he hesitates, grappling with the implications. Despite everything, he starts to tremble. He imagines the item could be worth around 100 million won. However, he remembers his surgery cost 2 billion won, and selling the lunchbox would only cover 5% of what he needs. with a hint of tension.
He recalls his motto, snipers should never get anxious. He reflects that selling the lunchbox would mean losing 100% of his familiarity with the Light Castle, not to mention being hated by everyone in the capital. He then pondered if it would really be that bad, considering he could gain 100 million, even if he gave up on the mission. The only real downside
Would be that some NPCs might end up hating him.
however,
He figures that wouldn't matter much once he left the game.
but deep down, he feels like he shouldn't give up on 100 million that easily. Still sitting in front of his computer, he's lost in thought. A moment later, two snappers yelling out loud. He complains about Madame Rue.
She could have at least promised a decent reward.
He questions why the reward is just an invitation to a grand opening. Furious, he rants about betraying her and selling the lunchbox, the secret. Then again, he wonders how he could betray a program. After all, Madame Rue is just an NPC, albeit an incredibly realistic one. He knows she's still just a program. Still furious, he wonders if, when Madame Rue told him to be careful of people, she was referring to himself. Meanwhile, his mother enters the room, asking why he's sighing so heavily. Is something wrong? She asks, noticing her presence. He asks, why aren't you asleep yet? I was getting a glass of water, she replies, then adds, what are you asterisk doing awake, Lyra? Instead of sleeping, I'm going to sleep, he replies. His mother then mentions there's a big dinner tomorrow, and warns she'll be home a bit late. But she promises she'll make dinner for him. Hearing this, the protagonist becomes pensive. He wonders what he was really worried about. Back in the game, he imagines the situation. It shouldn't be so complicated. He can worry about that later, but he's certain he'll need to go to the capital. Regardless, a little while later, the protagonist arrives where the old man is. The old man is startled by his appearance. Surprised, the man asks the young man if he had any luck. Today, however, Lyra replies that he couldn't find any more herbs, but he says he's still looking and asks the old man for patience. Then the protagonist asks about the supplier. The mustached old man remarks, the sun just came up. They're probably on their way here. He asks the young sharpshooter, would you like a cup of tea? Without hesitation, the protagonist accepts. He figures the old man's trying to be less grumpy. Lyra seizes the opportunity to ask if the old man sells maps. The old man, confirms, and the young marksman asks how much it costs. The old man replies that the map of Light's castle costs 80 silver pieces, while the map of the Phoebial Kingdom costs 5 gold pieces. With the map before him, but still covered, the protagonist question is indignantly the high price. The NPC explains that the maps are premium products, and that's why they're expensive. Read it! He feels awkward, imagining that
Maybe that's why map.
end up being copied and shared on the internet while sipping his tea. The protagonist decides he should give up on buying the map for now, planning to buy it when he has more money. Just then, a man enters the shop. He informs the owner that the goods have arrived. The owner remarks,
The shipment.
arrived earlier than expected, boo-boo. The newcomer says the old man wanted to introduce him to someone. With a playful grin, Boo-boo jokingly asks how a merchant could ever be late. As he approaches the protagonist, the latter figures this man must be who the shop owner was talking about. They greet each other, and Boo-boo mentions he's heard Lyra buys a lot of gunpowder. However, the protagonist
Character name, protagonist's name, if known.
replies that he wishes he could buy it wholesale. The vendor then promises he'll give the protagonist a good price. Bobo asks the young sharpshooter how many packs he needs. He mentions he brought 500 packs. The protagonist is taken aback and remarks that, at a good price, 500 packs should cost around 50 silver pieces. During the negotiation, the shop owner tries to intervene, saying he needs to organize things first, and asks the protagonist to follow him for a minute. The old man starts to usher the protagonist away. But Leia turns around and asks what the price would be. Bobo replies that the gunpowder costs 4 copper pieces, and each bullet costs 1 copper piece. The protagonist questions the old man, asking if he was buying gunpowder for 4 coppers. The old man confirms. Upon discovering the truth, Lyra becomes indignant and asks, how dare you try to rip me off? You sold me these items for 15 coppers. The owner tries to justify himself, but he can't. Faced with this, the protagonist tells him to go pick his own damn herbs. However, the old man grabs Lyra's leg, trying to stop him from leaving. The old man begs for forgiveness and promises to make it up to him. The protagonist asks how he'll do that, and the man replies that it will be with anything he desires. Then, the protagonist sits down in a chair and asks if he has a
Musket.
Since they're sold in weapons and equipment shops. Defensive ones, that is. The old man suggests he look for a tailor. But the protagonist reminds him that he said he could choose anything, insisting again. The old man promises the young man that he can choose any item from his shop. The protagonist looks at him and says he'll go easy on him. He asks for the complete map of the Kingdom of Phoebial. Furious, The old man questions if the protagonist knows how expensive that map is. Leia replies that in that case, the old man can collect the herb, since he's on his way out. Left with no other choice, the old man gives in to the demand, walking away with the bag of ammo. Lyra reflects on what Boo Boo said about continuing to sponsor him. Arriving at the bank, he remembers that using the bank's vault that will make transactions easier. He quickly sets up his in-game bank account.
After that,
Lyra realizes he hasn't spoken to his buddy Jong in a while, so he decides to send him a message. They start chatting. Lyra asks Jong what he's up to. Jong replies that he's out hunting in a party with his guildmates. This makes Lyra a little envious, as he wishes he could hunt in a group too. He mentions that he's reached level 12 and that she's heading to the capital. He asks if they can meet up. Kid Jong asks if Lyra has already hunted the sword eagle. He replies that he has. Kid Jong immediately congratulates him. Kid Jong then asks if he's at the Castle of Light and if he's seen Roger. Lyra confirms, and his friend says he should have been told. The protagonist asks his friend if he's part of her fan club. His friend tells Lyra to stop joking around. He says he's serious
and that he needs to eliminate them.
Then he starts yelling,
Almost definited the protagonist.
which makes him ask what happened. Jong asks Lyra why his guild put a bounty on the two of them. He says if he'd known she was at the castle, he would have gone after them immediately. The protagonist asks what the problem is, what makes him
want to get rid of her so badly.
Kid Jong questions if he's ever actually seen her use magic. He explains how a girl could be so brutal and declares that she's a witch. Kid Jong recounts how they were set in an ambush for her, but she suddenly froze everyone. They couldn't move, only watch. He describes how she smiled sinisterly, how she eliminated them one by one. While listening to the story, the protagonist thinks his friend is suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. He comments that he doesn't understand why Kejong was fighting her in the first place. Kejong explains that it's not just his guild. The entire region is spending a fortune on this situation. As the protagonist listens, he thinks to himself, it seems I've gotten involved with some pretty important people. He reflects that if he had joined her guild, Jong would probably assault him in real life. The protagonist says he understands, and that he'll talk to him later. His friend wishes him a safe trip. The protagonist reflects life is one thing and the game is another. But it feels like people are blurring the lines between the two. He wonders if it wouldn't be better to ally himself with a guild, for now at least. Despite that, he's confused. He feels flattered by the offer from a top-ranked player, but at the same time, he wonders what he should do about his cousin, who's being wronged. He decides there's no point in worrying about it now. And the most important thing is reaching the capital first. Analyzing the map, he remarked, it's impressive. But then questions, isn't this just a GPS? I can't seem to search for routes. Despite that, he confirms everything else works fine. He remembers studying parts of these maps.
Doing training exercises.
And concludes that for a sniper,
To acquire a map like this,
practically game over for any target. And now that he knows the way, he decides to check on things. But he's worried about the possibility of running out of money. However, he's confident he can always find resources wherever he goes. With a few items in his backpack, the Musketeer Rally, a level 12 expert in exploiting weaknesses, sets off towards the capital. He journeys for 3 hours. 3 hours later, as he runs, Proto contemplates what he would do. So if he didn't have the runner skill, just up ahead, he spots a sign warning that ambushes are common in this area. Proto notes that it's a forest filled with furious monsters. Entering the forest, May reminds himself to be careful. Suddenly, a warrior wearing the provocateur skin yells out, "Target's a brown bear, right ahead!" The bear lets out a ferocious roar. As the warrior raises his shield in defense, he announces, "I've got its attention." His companion quickly rushes towards the bear, and the two of them launch an attack. Meanwhile, a bald man provides support. The protagonist observes the scene and reflects. It's on the different character classes. He wonders if the warrior has forgone dealing damage, since he's wielding 2 shields. Suddenly, he hears someone shout that it's a giant grizzly bear. Suddenly, people start running all around him, yelling for everyone to flee. The field boss has appeared. Some players start recruiting for a raid, shouting for others to form a party. The warrior offers to organize the group. The protagonist, intrigued, he wonders where all these people came from. He figures they might have been waiting for this very moment. Lost in thought, he calculates that it would take at least 20 people to take down a field boss. All things considered, he reflects that an impromptu raid could easily fail without proper coordination. He also considers that melee attackers would be the primary damage dealers when facing the bear. Realizing this situation isn't ideal for him, as the warrior introduces himself as Kim Flower Petal. Our protagonist thinks his name sounds a bit feminine. Just then, Kim Flower Petal announces the boss is approaching. The protagonist starts to slowly withdraw, trying not to be seen. concealing himself behind a rock. He watches the scene with curiosity. Burning petals. Yells to the healers not to limit their healing to just members of their own parties, but to prioritize based on need. He also directs the melee attacker to stay behind the tanks. Astonished, the protagonist realizes the group's composition is surprisingly good for a team assembled last minute. Since they gathered players from pre-existing parties, he notices the group has a good balance of classes and roles. Hidden behind a rock, the protagonist begins to wonder if the boss truly lives up to its name. He believes he'll be safe there, at a distance of 70 meters. Meanwhile, one of the archers prepares to attack. Suddenly, the bear charges towards the group, letting out a deafening roar. Directly at the players, the sound reaches the protagonist, leaving him bewildered by its sheer force. He trembles uncontrollably, wondering how this is possible. He was so far away. Just then, a system notification appears beside him, identifying the sound as roar of agony. The ability prevents him from moving for 2 minutes. It reduces his HP by 10%. And drains his stamina below 30%. As he stares at the enormous bear, the protagonist is stunned and wonders if that creature, the size of an elephant. This is really a bear. Taking cover behind a rock, the protagonist tries to move, but can't. So, he remembers his reality and imagines he's inside a game. He questions why he has to feel this horrible sensation. Looking at the giant bear, the protagonist thinks that until the status effect wears off, they can defeat the bear in that time. Desperate. The players wonder who could remove that debuff from them, but they need to start with the tanks, since the bear is looking in their direction. He asks them to prioritize the tanks. As they look towards the bear, you realize the monster is heading straight for the group. Its heavy steps pound the earth. The warrior braces himself, so preparing to confront the boss. And so, the battle begins. The sheer force of the attack sends the warrior flying backwards. He warns his team he can only withstand 2 more blows. He calls out to the tanks, off tanks, get ready to taunt. He also urges the healers, focus on freeing up the other tanks. Next, the giant bear tries to attack him again. Shields up, he shouts. The bear unleashes a blow that crashes against his shield. A brilliant flash of light erupts successfully
On the defensive.
as he yells for his group to attack the boss. A volley of arrows, icy spears, and blazing fireballs are all launched towards the bear, witnessing the bear endure the full brunt of the simultaneous attack. The next time, the raid leader orders the melee attackers to fall back, and for the tanks to return to their positions. Watching the battle unfold, the protagonist is astonished, realizing they're actually succeeding. The archer comments also to the girl about how quickly the boss's HP is dropping. He wonders if they might defeat it quickly, and asks if they think they'll be able to defeat it quickly. Smiling, she tells him he should record it, since those kinds of videos are popular online.
Overhearing their conversation.
The warrior scolds them. He tells them to stop messing around and get ready. To give it their all, he explains that when the boss's HP drops to 20%, we'll need to neutralize it immediately. If the group's HP drops below 20%, and the boss uses another roar, the entire group will be in danger. The girl comments that they're almost there anyway. She tells him to ease up a bit. The leader says his shield has lost a lot of durability. He warns that he needs to fall back for a moment. Someone questions why he's retreating, since the monster is almost neutralized. His shield will be recharged soon. He urges his allies to stay alert. Suddenly, the warrior's shield is hit again. Right above his head. An arrow appears, striking the bear directly. The warrior is taken by surprise, noticing the boss's HP drop to 20%. He yells for everyone to attack at 19%. 0.9%. Flames begin to erupt across the boss's body. The girl with fiery hair asks if the bear is using magic. The blonde man, his shoulder also ablaze, screams, "I'm on fire!" as the fire engulfs them all. Some shout that the flames won't go out. Is this not normal fire? They ask. Realizing the situation is out of control, the leader shouts for everyone to run. But the fire has already consumed almost everything. The warrior can announce the party has been disbanded and orders everyone to flee. Finding the protagonist, he asks if he didn't hear the order. Hey, Turan. However, the protagonist was lost in thought, not even realizing that he hadn't actually attacked the boss. With a smile on her face, Lyra said she wasn't part of that raid. King warned him, saying that when the boss was in that state, it would attack anyone, regardless of who had attacked it, and that it could stay like that for several days. He then asked the protagonist to go hunting, in a different field. Startled, the protagonist asked how many days that would be on average. Kim replied that it would take between 10 days and a month. Meanwhile, the protagonist shouted, "Why are we running away? We should finish what we started." Therefore, he thought he wouldn't be able to use that route for a whole month. But then he remembered that if this lasted a month, he would fail his quest. Seeing the bear's fury, he wondered why the group had left the boss in that state. Left it like that. He thought that if he couldn't reach the capital in time, he would tear the petals off the burning blossom.
Rip them all off.
He knew he needed to stay calm
and decided to think through his options.
His first option was to assemble a raid team, but that was uncertain. A long shot. The second was to find a high-level player. Also uncertain. Another gamble. The third was to sneak past the boss, which was impossible, out of the question. So he took a deep breath. He became furious. Realizing none of the options were viable, he decided there was only one solution. Defeat him by holding his weapon. He thought if he had to wait a month, he wouldn't be able to sell or complete his quest. Therefore, it was all or nothing. Looking at the enraged bear, Oh figured he should take advantage of the situation. That since its HP was below 20%. He imagined he might have a chance, especially with several people drawing its aggro, which would buy him some time preparing for the shot. He determined the distance was 70 meters, and the wind was blowing southwest. He began his countdown, with his sights locked on. Already on target. He fired, landing a direct hit on the big boss, sweating nervously. He knew he'd made a good shot. Meanwhile, Kim asked if she should assemble a new team. For the raid! His partner called out to him. He told her to keep moving until they reached the village. He didn't have time to talk, however. She said it wasn't what he was thinking, and urged him to look behind him. She said that the person who was hiding had shot at something. Turning around, Kim was surprised when he realized it was Lyra who had fired the shot. Then Kim wondered if she was a musketeer class. If he had not, would he have invited Lyra on the raid? He asked her where she aimed. The hit, she replied. A direct hit. The warrior pondered, knowing that the musketeer class boasted the highest attack damage in the game. He wondered if it would be possible for the protagonist to attract the enemy's aggro. Lyra asked, how did you manage to hit from that distance? As the girl and the archer talked, he said that with Lyra, they could defeat the boss. However, the girl remembered that there weren't many people left with them. Then they'll have to split the loot when they manage to survive this. Will you two stop your yapping and start running? But the girl asked if they should really keep running, even after he made such an incredible shot. The warrior admits it was a great shot, but emphasizes that this could still be the end for them. As they talk, someone comments, it takes a musketeer a full minute to reload. Another voice chimes in, did he actually fire? The first voice replies confidently, he'll be eliminated in the next minute. Meanwhile, Lyra wonders to herself, did I really hit it? In the head? The protagonist is shocked to see the bear still alive. Then, a notification pops up. Roar of agony. Fearful. Lyra is paralyzed for 2 minutes. His HP drops by 10%, and his stamina plummets to below 30%.
As he reloads his weapon?
His body trembles violently. He realizes he was overconfident. He underestimated the boss. Now engulfed in flames, he knows he's drawn its full aggro. Pouring gunpowder into his weapon, he knows he has to act fast. One of the warriors tries to escape the bear, but fails. The boss's flames engulf him. Suddenly, someone yells, trying to distract the bear. As the boss searches for the source of the shout, the person yells again, urging everyone to run. Fear begins to paralyze the protagonist. He wonders if the monster is coming after him. He figures that in 2 minutes, the booster will have more than enough time to neutralize everyone there, including him. Desperate, he yells for the captain to radio for help with the shields. He states that he's confident in the damage he can inflict. He asks them to just draw the aggro to him. However, he believes the captain has already fled and screams for help. While the boss doesn't let up its fury, the protagonist thinks that at this rate, he will definitely be neutralized. Aiming again, he tries to control his anxiety, reminding himself that the worst thing that could happen is his elimination. He wonders if the boss could survive 2 shots in the same spot. Seeing the boss approach, the protagonist knows exactly where to aim. He aims and fires. Noticing the sound, someone is startled and turns around.
Did you shoot again? They ask.
The archer exclaims, that was insane. You hit the mark again. And surprisingly, it was the exact same spot as before. The girl is astonished. Another excellent shot, she says. How is that even possible? Kim states, I've never seen anything like that before. Lyra's accuracy is insane. The archer once again asks the leader, are you sure you don't want him on our side? With the protagonist, Kim questions, aren't we being a little reckless here? He says the other players have all been eliminated and that the protagonist's turn is next. The archer insists, saying that's precisely why he suggested intervening before things get worse. Kim replies that if he joins the fight, he'll be the first one neutralized. He also reminds them that one of his shields has already broken. Turning to leave, he says he feels sorry for the protagonist. He's going back to the village. The girl asks him if he's really going to abandon him. He replies that he already warned the young sharpshooter. They realize the last survivor has been eliminated, and that Lyra is also running away. They're completely stunned. Marquinhos calls out saying they need to gather more people on the way to the village. The warrior remarks that he'll be back with another raid team within the hour. He figures he'll let the protagonist do the heavy lifting while they reap the rewards.
Later,
With a smug grin, he thinks to himself that the blame isn't his, and that life boils down to time. Arriving back in town, some people ask if it was really a giant brown bear. Giant. Surrounded by several people. Someone announces
that they're recruiting
members for the Agony Bear Network.
7 tanks.
13 DPS and 5 healers. He states that the first to arrive will be the first to serve at that very moment. And someone introduces themselves as healer, while another boasts confidence in their DPS. After everyone gathers, the call to depart is made. After a 30-minute trek, they're warned the bear is close. Everyone is urged to exercise extreme caution, as its hiding place is unknown. Observing the destruction left by the boss, they remark it's to be expected from a monster of that level, but no one sees it. They begin to wonder where the massive bear could be. Kim points in the other direction, suggesting the boss likely fled. After defeating the other players, he asserts it will be easy to find due to its size. 2 hours later, growing impatient, the brunette asks, where could he have gone? The blonde, in turn, questions if it's all just a lie. 3 hours have now passed. The girl, visibly agitated, demands to know, why haven't you found the boss yet? He said it was the size of an elephant. A man in a blue shirt also interrogates him. Where is the boss? Trying to explain himself, he says the bear was here before, but it probably hid somewhere. It was almost neutralized. The new group was losing patience with Kim's excuses and declared they would search a little longer. But if they didn't find the bear, Kim would be in serious trouble. Terrified, he wondered where the boss could be hiding. Meanwhile,
he also doubted if the protagonist had actually
finished off the boss 4 hours earlier. The protagonist was indignant, while the other players suffered under the boss's fury. He wondered how the bear was still alive. After taking 2 bullets to the head, he decided to retreat and regroup, watching the group that had started this whole mess leave. As he prepared to reload his weapon, he figured complaining wouldn't get him anywhere, so he decided to reload on the run. Since he had practiced this type of strategy dozens of times, confidently he said that's how he would succeed. All he had to do was what he'd trained for. With a fully loaded weapon, he aimed, picturing himself putting another bullet in the boss's head. But before he could pull the trigger, the giant bear slammed into him, sending him flying backward with savage force. He left a trail of destruction in his wake, sprawled on the ground. Liha realized that hurt a lot more than he'd anticipated. He wondered how only 20% synchronization could cause so much pain. The young sharpshooter felt lucky to be alive. But he soon realized something was wrong with his vision. What the hell is going on? He asked himself.
Why his HP
was so low? Reeling from the damage of the attack, he wondered where the boss was. He couldn't hear it. Even with its massive size, he couldn't feel the heat of the flames that had been radiating all around. This made him think maybe he was at the edge of 20% synchronization. Leia realized he needed to focus much harder. Still, he knew he couldn't stay still. If he got hit again, he would be eliminated at any moment. However, he also knew the boss was close to being neutralized. One decisive blow could mean the end for both of them. He remembered stories about a blind swordsman, but he'd never heard of a blind sniper. With a slight smile, he liked the idea of being a blind sniper. Sensing the presence of the enormous bear nearby, he shouted that his heart was calm. The boss unleashed an attack that sailed over the protagonist's head. With his finger on the musket's trigger, Lyra fired, landing another precise shot. Wounded, the bear began to roar. The protagonist was confused, asking himself, why wasn't the boss finished yet? Facing the bear, he declared that it would be either him or the boss. Preparing to use his charging power with the bayonet, he charged confidently toward the giant bear. As he approached and plunged the bayonet deep into the boss's body. With a guttural roar, he demanded its complete and utter annihilation. Ripping the bayonet free, the bear felt the full force of the protagonist's savage fury. With everything spent in that very instant, the protagonist collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Moments later, he jolted awake, startled. Disoriented, he wondered if he'd blacked out. He muttered that if the boss hadn't been neutralized, he would have finished himself off. Then, a cascade of level-up notifications flooded his vision. His eyes widened in astonishment as he saw them. Did I really just gain 9 levels? Musket mastery increased once, and bayonet advance went up twice. Then stares down at the neutralized bear and yells, proclaiming his victory? The protagonist is furious with the bear for what it put him through. He starts searching the bear's carcass for items. Lara is surprised when she realizes this wasn't just any boss, but a field boss. Because of this, she believes the bear possessed incredible loot. Suddenly, some system screens pop up. He wonders what it could be. He discovers he's earned 2 achievements and a title. One achievement is Lord of the Solo. The system congratulates him, saying he defeated an enemy 50 levels above his own. Since Lidra was the first to achieve this, his name will be entered into the Hall of Fame, along with a 200% bonus experience boost and 30 status points. Leah also earned a title for displaying unwavering courage. For becoming stronger by facing formidable foes. The title's effects include an additional 10 attack damage and tripled effectiveness in battles against enemies, 20 or more levels higher than the player. The final achievement is Firebrand, and once again, the system congratulates him for hunting the Agony Bear, the king of all the bears. The protagonist then opens his status window, and upon reviewing it, notices he has 135 remaining status points. He's astonished by what he sees. Leah remarks, "You already have enough status points to be equivalent to a level 30 player," and says that if he uses all his remaining points, it'll be like jumping up 27 levels all at once. That way he'll be able to defeat a level 50 enemy who hasn't earned any achievements. After analyzing his attributes, he decides how he'll distribute his stat points. He declares that he's now a musketeer with the HP of a mid-level tank. The protagonist looks around and remarks that all that's left is a scene of absolute carnage. Gathering some of the items, he sees sarcastically, "Poor bear! He dropped items while being neutralized. And all this is probably worth a fortune." Leia states that she'll take the main prize, the giant grizzly bear's items. Among the dropped items are the blazing bearskin mantle and the blazing bearskin boots, the fiery bearskin cloak. The protagonist's eyes widen, imagining how rare all these items must be. Even without a weapon, he's impressed. Leia comments that all the clothes he used to wear are worse than the flaming bear cloak. Upon putting on the cloak, the protagonist remarks on its perfect fit. He declares himself incredibly lucky, as it's only his first day of his journey, and he's already clad in the flaming bear's fur, with a smile on his face. He announces he's on his way to the capital. Meanwhile, in real life, people are talking about Kim, saying he ran away, but he'll probably be back later to finish off the bear, to ambush Pardo and hoard all the items for himself. Seeing those messages, Kim was furious. He slammed his hand on the table and yelled, "It wasn't me!" As he read more and more of the hateful messages, his anger intensified. He was already livid that he hadn't found the bear, and now he was being accused of stealing. He was resolute. He shouted, "I'll find out who did this!" It didn't matter. If he couldn't prove his innocence, he'd be deemed guilty and banned from the game. Still furious, he started wondering who could have done this, and if they were lurking nearby. However, he didn't believe it could be the protagonist. Meanwhile, back in the game, the protagonist walked along, humming a tune. He thought his level 7 equipment gave him an extra 30% fire resistance. He figured it would be enough to withstand, at least for a little while, Beyond's fire magic. Remembering her, he recalled what his friend had said about her. Then, he decided to open his map to check his location. He wondered where the Emerald Forest and the Tamba Jungle were. He realized both were quite far from the capital. He also wondered about Gamsongbong, which didn't even appear on the map. After studying the map, Lyra felt hungry. He said to himself, "To survive, I need to hunt." So he entered a forest known for its bears. Among the bushes, he figured there had to be at least one bear around. He quickly spotted one lying on the ground. He estimated the distance to be roughly 60 meters, and there was no wind. He took the shot. However, he felt it would have been better for both of them if the bear had been neutralized with a single bullet. Despite feeling a pang of pity, he still saw the bear as a monster. Lara observed the bear and noticed it wasn't attacking. He then remembered the effect of the Bear King's pelt, which prevented any bear from attacking him. With that, he fired again. As he approached the bear, commented that at this pace, he should reach level 30 before even reaching the capital. While he was focused on the bear, he had something appear behind him. Turning around to see what it was, he noticed it was a bear cub. He asked himself, what is this adorable creature that just appeared? Just then, the little bear grabbed his leg, leaving him flustered. Lyra found the situation dangerous, as he felt both guilt and overwhelming cuteness. Succumbing to the cub's charm, he wondered how he could neutralize it. Then he took out a piece of bread and said, "You must be hungry too, little one." He offered the bread to the small bear, and while feeding it, remarked that he looked absolutely ravenous. But he says he can't get attached to the little bear cub. He explains that he needs to hurry and reach the capital. Apologizing to the cub, he says he'll never see it again. But the least expected thing happens. The little bear hugs his leg, stopping him from leaving. In that moment, the protagonist crouches down and begs the cub to stop being so adorable. He asks,
Where did you learn to tilt your head like that?
Or is it just instinct? The protagonist takes a deep breath, picks up the little animal, and wonders what he'll do with it.
After that,
John asks if the protagonist has reached the capital yet, but he replies that he hasn't, explaining that the entire journey is completely destroying him. He advises him to be careful with the bears, saying that with his low level, he wouldn't even be able to run. As they chat, the protagonist asks his cousin, shouldn't you be asleep? Because of college?
he replies that he has an exam the next day.
But he's going to pull an all-nighter because he promised to do a raid.
Leah then asks about the exam.
But his cousin replies that the raid is more important.
Hearing this, the protagonist,
he imagines his aunt won't be happy at all with what was said. Someone asks if the cousin had messaged him. The protagonist takes the opportunity to ask if it's possible to raise animals as if they were
their pets.
asks if he's planning on buying a horse. But the protagonist replies that's not it. He's actually interested in the monsters or animals that live in the fields.
The first one, if he's thinking about taming a monster for battle.
He explains that it's impossible to train monsters unless you're a tamer.
While listening to his cousin, the little bear continues to cling to the protagonist's boot.
While petting the cub,
The protagonist asks if it wouldn't be possible to raise it
and feed it like a baby.
Then,
Xiong asks if he saw a monster cub, explaining that they're very difficult to find. He asks if the protagonist knew that monsters have variable HP. He comments that the cubs have less HP, but they give the same amount of XP. As the little bear cub licks the protagonist's face, he asks his cousin what happens to cubs like this one. His cousin replies that they're usually brutally
Neutralized when they're found.
Hearing this, the light in the protagonist's eyes fades. He says he'll talk to his cousin when he reaches the capital, since it will still take 5 days to cross the wasteland. But media comments that it sounds awful, and that the protagonist
should have bought a teleportation scroll.
finally, she wishes Lyra good luck and says she's eager to see him again. As he sets the little bear down, the protagonist echoes his cousin's sentiments. Same to you. Then he's left unsure of what to do. Despite having eliminated the cub's parents and siblings, he can't bring himself to neutralize it, but adds that if he leaves him behind, someone might hurt the little bear cub. Finally, he scoops up the cub in his arms and says that whatever happens, will it be by adopting the little bear cub? He sets off towards the capital. The next day, the protagonist lands another perfect shot on a bear. He then remarks that he's already reached level 24. He says he's leveling up pretty quickly. He observes that this is good.
But wonders.
Why the bear cub?
Is growing so rapid. While the protagonist rummages through the body of the downed bear, now lifeless, the little bear seems startled by something. A snake is slithering towards the protagonist unnoticed. Kneeling on the ground, he reflects that once past the initial stages of the game, things were supposed to get easier. However, he remains oblivious to the snake that's getting closer and closer. Just as he's about to speak, he feels a sharp sting in his leg. Confused and disoriented, he realizes he's been bitten by a snake. His eyes widen in shock. A system notification flashes before him. Poison.
For the next 3 minutes.
He will lose 50 GP per second. Panicked, he stares at the warning, despair creeping in. He realizes the snake's venom could be fatal. He only has 1,300 GP. Looking towards his pet, he says he can't see the snake because of the tall grass. Suddenly he notices his little bear has caught the snake.
Astonishment washes over him.
Rushing to the cub, he asks, did you help me because you were worried? He looks at the bear and says, looking very proud. But then, the bear cub starts chewing on the snake. Seeing this, the protagonist asks, is he eating it? Lyra holds the small bear in her arms, who takes a deep breath and says, he can eat it. Nah, but if he keeps this up, he's gonna grow again. Still holding the bear. The protagonist jokes, hey, he's not bamboo to grow that fast. A short time later, Lyra notices the bear has already gotten bigger. The next day, the bear had grown so much that the protagonist could ride on him. The young sniper is indignant with the game masters, asking why they didn't give bears a more realistic growth rate. Regardless, he also thinks that otherwise, there might not be enough adult bears for hunting in the game. After that, the protagonist reflects that in just one day, his bear has been hunted 6 times. He worries about the possibility of the bear being neutralized while he's distracted. To try and avoid trouble, he makes a sign for his pet, stating that he doesn't bite. He remarks that he's going to have a huge headache when he gets to the capital, but decides to deal with that later. Upon arriving in the city, the other players panic at the sight of the bear. Their protagonist tries to calm them down, saying everything is alright and that his pet is a gentle bear. He explains that the bear doesn't bite, and that it's only slightly larger than a regular bear. However, no one expected the bear to put the protagonist's head inside its mouth. Seeing this, everyone panics. They shout that it's a field boss. Walking through the town, the protagonist comments that the players have run away again. Terrified by the bear's size, he reflects that he hasn't even fed his pet that much. Because if he did, it would be the size of a van. Leia comments that there's nothing to be done, since she thinks they won't be able to enter the village. However, someone whispers, there really is a bear tamer. The protagonist notices people whispering, saying he's riding a bear instead of a horse. Noticing this, he wonders if his bear would be able to run. Surprisingly, the bear seems to understand what its master is saying and takes off. In a sprint, the protagonist remarks that he didn't expect his pet to obey his commands so well. He then says that if he had known this before, he would have tried it much sooner. While the bear runs at full speed, carrying the protagonist, Leah shouts for him to go to the capital. In 2 days, the protagonist arrives at the capital. Hellstock, observing the grandeur of the city, he imagines he'll soon be very busy. As they approach the city gates, the protagonist remarks that the bear did a good job, since they're almost at the destination, and decides to continue on foot. However, some players approach, asking what the monster is doing there. They urge Lyra to keep his distance from the animal, claiming it's dangerous. This makes the protagonist wonder why everyone is freaking out, as he and the bear are surrounded by several people. Many think his pet is a boss. The protagonist tries to explain that he raised the bear from a cub, and assures them that he doesn't bite. Even so, there's someone yells, calling for the tanks to assemble. Up ahead, a barrier of tanks with shields forms, leaving the protagonist confused. He wonders if they're NPC guards, and starts to think things are getting out of control. An archer yells for everyone to prepare to attack. Immediately after, a mage instructs them to start casting spells. The protagonist grinds his teeth, questioning if all of this is real, even though he told the truth. Left with no other choice, he steps in front of his pit and yells for everyone to freeze. He warns he'll shoot if they attack. Despite the warning, a blonde woman insists on launching a fire attack, while a sorceress conjures a magic arrow. With the attacks heading towards him, the protagonist notices a convergence of powers. Advancing against them, without hesitation, he pulls the trigger of his musket, but he can't control the weapon's recoil, and the bullet is fired. It speeds towards the incoming spells. A bright flash illuminates his face, leaving him completely stunned by what he just witnessed. Quickly, the warrior throws his sacred shield, blocking Leah's attack and leaving her bewildered. Then, the fighter begins to channel. It's a daily dissipation. With a simple wave of his hand, he unleashes the spell between them. Leah, still aiming her weapon at her opponents, watches as they try to shield themselves from the blinding light, at any cost.
But then, the young
Sharpshooter is shocked to see the shattered fragments of the shield falling right on top of him. Eyes wide with shock, the protagonist hears someone calling out to him, a hand resting on their sword. The black-haired warrior tells him to lower his weapon. He explains that no one is allowed to cause trouble in Atadog. As the tension hangs heavy in the air, someone asks if this group is part of the anti-magic faction. After all, they appear to be holy knights. With that, one of the knights asks the protagonist to lower his weapon. He clarifies that the entire commotion was the result of a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, the girls who are confronting Leah watch as the knight declares that no one will be punished. Looking at the protagonist's weapon, he warns that if he fires again, they won't forgive you for such an act. But the protagonist tries to explain that he and his bear were attacked first by the girls. The warrior states that they are aware of what happened, but points at the bear and says that it's also responsible for the misunderstanding. He clarifies to Leah that this time, they'll turn a blind eye, understanding the situation. The protagonist agrees to follow the knight's instructions. The knight thanks him for his understanding. The knight then reinforces that it's explicitly illegal for someone without permission to perform attack magic within the capital. But he assures them that this time they'll let it slide, since they acted to protect the citizens of Elstock. Next, he orders everyone to clear out. They're blocking the way as they disperse at some of the players. He remarked that it's the first time they've seen a fire attack and a magic arrow. They praise the girl's spells, but are even more impressed by the knight's cloaking spell. As the protagonist walks away, the fighter calls out to him, asks to come along. The protagonist is annoyed. What do you want now? He asks. Wouldn't the knight just neutralize me? Suddenly, the warrior eliminates his bear as a precaution. Cersei, the god, takes a deep breath and seriously states that, by the honor of the sacred knights, just swear you will do no harm to him or his bear. Syndergaard asks Lyra if that was enough. The protagonist, sweating, replies, yes, but he remains wondering what the knight truly meant. Approaching his ally, the knight, Cinder, says he has received the protagonist's consent. Then he asks Sir de Gron to guide them. With that settled, Harvey asks Lyra and her bear to follow. Following de Gron,
Cinder observes the situation, taking a deep breath. Looking at the protective barrier, he remarks that the shield, specialized in blocking physical damage, has been damaged. And because of that, he wonders who the real protagonist actually is. Then, the protagonist notices something. The system notifies him that he's earned an achievement. It's regarding a holy knight. The holy knights are an order tasked with protecting the capital of the Phoebial kingdom. And as they acknowledge someone's abilities, they allow the establishment of friendly relations.
In this way.
And a reward of 50 more continental reputation points. Continental. Lost in thought about the achievement, the protagonist wonders if he's already earned the respect of a holy knight. Could he also earn the respect of a commander? He remembers that up until now, he had earned 30 continental reputation points, but this achievement alone had just given him 50. Arriving at their destination, the knight remarks that the place seems suitable. However, the whole situation makes the protagonist a little tense. Dagron then asks what the problem with the bear is.
Since Leia shouldn't be so suspicious,
The knight asks if he's an honorary member of the Light's Castle Guard, because he can't believe someone like that. It would cause trouble in the kingdom's capital. Hearing this, the protagonist becomes confused and notices something different. He wonders if his national contribution is finally coming into play, or if it's just his reputation. The protagonist tries to explain, but his question about how he managed to tame a bear without being a bear tamer. He replies that it happened while he was on his way there. That's where he encountered a flaming bear. The knight then suggests that perhaps it's related to the agony bear. Sigurd comments that he understands it's a monster that doesn't attack people, but he can't allow the bear to enter Elstock. Looking at the bear, he explains it's because of the previous commotion. Because even if the large bear is trained, there's still a chance it could cause chaos. Faced with this, the protagonist asks, "What should I do with my pet?" Sigurd ponders. The human community is for humans, and a bear community is for bears. He asks if that isn't, after all, the law of nature. The protagonist then asks if he's suggesting the young sharpshooter get rid of his pet. Lyra questions if in that case, the protagonist could enter Istok. With a knight's confirmation, the protagonist pets his animal, thinking that since the combatant had asked if he was tamed, Leah believes there must be some kind of marking to identify monsters that have been properly domesticated, because he thinks that no NPC, no player, could tell him apart, and thus he would likely be put in danger again. Still petting the animal, he says he will release him. Sigurd, hearing that, the bear thanks him. When Lara confirms he'll be released immediately, the bear looks confused as they leave. Dagron asks the protagonist to wait. Looking at him, Dagron asks permission to know his name. With a slight smile, the protagonist replies, "My name is Ralea, the musketeer." Then Dagron greets him as a guard. Ralea already with his. The winged group is ready to depart. They vow to remember the protagonist's name as they take to the skies. They wish Lyra wonderful adventures, gritting their teeth, a hint of envy in their voices. The protagonist wonders why they're so dramatic. Then he takes a deep breath and calls to his companion to keep moving. Night has fallen. Arriving at a place that seems far from the city, Lyra speaks to her animal companion. She says it's time for them to part ways. It's what's best for both of them. The bear, showing love and affection, embraces her. The protagonist tells him to stop and just go. Meanwhile, Lyra is suddenly lost in thought. Memories flood back of the moments shared with her companion from the day they met to this very moment. Amidst the rush of memories, he warns that he'll shoot if the bear doesn't stop. The bear, unimpressed by the protagonist's words, bares its teeth and bites him while licking Leah's hand. The protagonist asks why the bear did that. He complains about being hurt. Suddenly, a powerful aura fills the air, leaving the protagonist astonished and wondering what's happening. Leah notices a system screen starting to appear, which piques her curiosity. What could it be? Looking at the screen, he sees that he's earned the soulmate achievement, showing that despite the dangers he risked his life for a beloved creature of Middle Earth, his soul has been bound to an animal companion. Though their bodies may be separated, his pet will never forget him. As a reward, Lyra gained the soul link skill. Astonished, the protagonist realizes another achievement unlocked. He is the third person to achieve soulmate, and the first 3 to achieve this feat are recorded in the Hall of Fame. This granted him a bonus of an additional 200% and some stat boosts like INT +8, VI to +10. Overwhelmed with emotion, Alera looks at his pet. He notices the bear is crying profusely. He promises to never forget him. While petting his friend, he asks the bear to stay, be healthy, and avoid being hunted. As he walks away, Lyra wonders what's wrong with him. He's feeling rather sad. He thinks he shouldn't feel so bad, since he didn't feel this way when he parted ways with his previous companions. Hearing a loud roar from behind,
he notices a new screen from the system opening in front of him. The system displays the skill Beginner Soul Link, where Lyra would be able to summon the soul of his soulmate. The skill allows him to recover his pet's physical body before it's neutralized and gain a buff proportional to your strength. However, this skill cannot be leveled up. The current effect allows you to summon your soulmate for 30 minutes. The summoned soulmate will be half the user's level. Leo gets excited, imagining he can count on his friend, even if he's neutralized, but thinking about the limitations, he realizes that despite this, he can see him anytime. He remembers telling his friend to get stronger, because he believes in him. Later that afternoon, exhausted, the protagonist wonders how far he's traveled, since it took him all night to return. However, he finally arrives in Hellstock. Upon entering the city, Lyra realizes it's absolutely packed. He wonders how he'll ever find Kid Jong in this crowd. Moments later, Kid Jong sends a message. He asks if Lyra has arrived in Hellstock yet. Lyra confirms, then asks why there are so many people. Kid Jong explains that people tend to gather there when they have nothing else to do. Lyra then asks where Jong is. He replies that he's at the South Gate. Meanwhile, Lieha questions exactly where this South Gate is. Irritated, he grinds his teeth and asks if Kai is messing with him. He has no idea how he's supposed to find it in this chaos. Kai replies that it's easy to get lost, since the South Gate has no distinguishable landmark. Taking a deep breath, the protagonist notices Jong standing nearby. Furious, he confronts him. He complains about not being warned. Jong laughs at the situation and taunts the protagonist, saying he just wanted to see how noble he really was. Two nearby players observe and comment. Is Lyra really a musketeer? They ask. Because he doesn't even seem to be. To level 10. After the commotion, the protagonist's eyes widen as he realizes something important. He decides to examine Kid's clothing, assuming Young is a typo and should be Kid. He observes his wristband, his boots, and the rest of his equipment, looking his cousin over completely. Lyra points and comments that he, assuming Lyra is a typo for Lyra, acts like he's wearing some cool gear. Jong, however, replies that it's pretty standard for his skill level. With a smirk, another soldier, as if Lyra spent a fortune to get his gear. The protagonist doesn't understand the question. Then, Kia asks if he stole drops from other players, but Lyra replies that he got everything by hunting. However, someone approaches, saying they don't believe him, and questions if Lyra is too strong to only be taking down boars. When the protagonist turns around, the man says it's a pleasure to meet him, as he's heard a lot about the young sharpshooter. Then the man introduces himself as Rian. The protagonist introduces himself as well, saying his name is Raliha. Rian remarks that Kit mentioned that the protagonist is a sniper with the rank of Sergeant First Class in the army, and wouldn't stop praising his potential as a sharpshooter. Embarrassed, Ikai tries to silence the redhead, saying that everything he just said was a lie. Taking a deep breath, Lyra thinks that maybe Ryan is a good kid. At that moment, the protagonist hears someone ask if those weren't the clothes dropped by the field boss. He tries to say that they came from some bear, and explains that is the Bear of Agony. The young man introduces himself as Sasuke, and the protagonist asks if he's Japanese. Sasuke replies no, but that his name is inspired by a certain work. Overhearing the conversation, he asks what they're talking about. Sasuke asks if he's never heard of the Agony Bear set. He recalls it being a hot topic of discussion recently within the community. Sasuke is then stunned when he realizes the protagonist possesses 3 pieces of the 7-piece Agony Bear set. He thinks to himself that this isn't equipment a beginner could easily acquire or obtain easily. Meanwhile, John introduces his cousin, the 5th combo master named Till, whom he had mentioned earlier. John smiles and tells the protagonist not to hesitate to ask if he has any questions, because even though his allies are busy, he called them for help, which explains that, before anything else, he needs to decide on a suitable hunting spot for the protagonist, and only then can he check his level. He then asks what Leah's level is, with a look of astonishment. The protagonist answers the group, saying that he's level 25. Surprised, the protagonist notices them whispering amongst themselves, wondering, how could he have said that Lyra was level 10? Since it didn't seem to be true. Someone turns to him and asks, are you really level 25? Lyra explains that it just sort of happened, since he'd been hunting. Slightly indignant, John asks what he was hunting. During the conversation, Rian wonders if the protagonist was the one who took down the Sword Eagle a few days ago. Back when he was only level 12, he continues to ponder how Lara managed to level up 10 times so quickly. Then Rian remarks that he'll likely be seeing him around often, and asks why they don't become friends. The protagonist receives the friend request notification and accepts without hesitation. After the introductions, Rian calls for everyone to move on. Might asks the guildmaster if he's leaving already. He confirms and says he'll see the group later. With that,
Say, still curious.
and asks his cousin to tell him what really happened. He promises to buy him a snack. Lyra accepts John's request, and with a chuckle, he asks, where should I begin? Later, back at the warehouse, as the protagonist tells his story, John is in disbelief.
He learns that his cousin defeated the field boss.
Lyra explains that's how he earned a ton of XP with his hand on his chin. John comments that the musket really does have incredibly high attack power. And if Lara had enough time to land shots, we had a critical spot. Winning wouldn't be impossible. John remembers when Lara mentioned that her raid team was assembled last minute, and that they hadn't had time to properly build relationships, on top of not being properly organized. Hey, where did the captain gone? The aggro shifted. Naturally, to the closest team members, which gave Lyra enough time to inflict significant damage. He comments that a musket's base attack is 223. But with the right strategy, Lyra could have inflicted much greater damage, since the protagonist could only fire one shot per minute, and his HP was low. He says he believes Lyra truly neutralized the monster, acknowledging the accomplishment. He admits that his cousin was the one who defeated the Agony Bear. John mentions that in his guild, there's an archer who barely managed to hit a target at 66 meters with a longbow, and after hitting it once, he gave up and turned on the SAO back. The protagonist questions this, saying that the basic range of a longbow isn't 65 meters. John replies that at first, with the chest turned off, the archer couldn't even get close to the maximum range, making it possible to use it efficiently, only with the SAO activated. While they're talking, he notices something strange and asks his cousin, "It's a musket that only has a range of 40 meters. He then questions how Lyra managed to take down the boss with a single shot. He takes a swig of his drink as Lyra explains she actually fired 3 shots, and in the end had to resort to using the bayonet. John exclaims that makes no sense. Agitated, he reminds everyone that Lyra's musket has a 40-meter range and a fire rate of 1 shot per minute. He asks incredulously, did the bear just stand still? While Lyra shot the boss 3 times? Deadpan. The protagonist admits I turned off loot drops. John lets out a roar so loud it can be heard outside the warehouse. He questions Lyra about why she's playing with her Hawkeye deactivated. The protagonist responds calmly that it's to learn how to use her abilities correctly. The young sharpshooter explains that her accuracy is fixed at 50% with Hawkeye's activated, and says that she can't hunt, starting with that thing turned on. Indignant, John asks how much range he gained by deactivating the system. Lyra replies that he achieved a distance of 100 meters, and that all the shots were headshots. This makes John stare at him and ask why he omitted these details. But Lyra responds that he never asked. With a slam of his hand on the table, John calls the protagonist over and asks if he would like to join his guild. Lyra takes a deep breath and says that he has no interest in joining his cousin's guild. Slamming his hand on the table again, John asks the reason for this decision. The protagonist smiles and replies that it's simply because he doesn't want to. John extends his hand and asks, Lyra, do I know how famous my guild is? He summons the guild symbol onto his cloak. Have you ever heard of it? He asks. He winks and adds, that's why I told the guild master about you. And the other high-ranking members too, he brags. However, Lyra replies, I don't recall you mentioning that. Feeling deflated, John mutters, I feel like an idiot. But he presses on, explaining our guild leader, Ryan, is incredibly skilled. Skilled enough to be on TV, he emphasizes. Indignant at Lyra's indifference, Shadden exclaims, in South Korea, he's a ranked 8th, gesturing at the feast before them. John adds, with just one spell, he caused a massive explosion, taking out all the enemies. Then Lyra asks about John's global ranking. He replies that he believes he's around 40th place, but he's not entirely sure. Without much enthusiasm, the protagonist says he understands. John stands up and asks why. Lyra doesn't seem impressed with the guild leader. After all, he's 8th in South Korea and only 40th in the world. Lost in thought, the protagonist remembers Hamuha Jong, who holds the 9th position in the global rankings. Quickly, he asks what Jong's ranking is. Uncomfortable. Jong says that Lyra is asking too many questions. The protagonist insists he stop beating around the bush, and Jong finally admits that he's ranked within the top 100 in South Korea. Jong explains that in his region, there isn't a single person who doesn't know the Templar Master K, known as the Invincible and Immortal One. Hearing this, the protagonist ponders whether he should give in to the urge to shoot his cousin. Smiling, Lyra asks if Taeyong is going to brag about being in the 500th position and that in the global rankings, raising his glass. John smiles as well. He says that being 500th out of 100 million players isn't bad at all. Taking a sip of his drink, he remarks that he's only 2 levels away from reaching level 200 and assures them he's not slacking off. Startled, the protagonist asks what is exactly at level 198 and admits that it's much higher than he'd ever imagined. John notices Lyra's astonishment and asks why he's so shocked by his level. Lyra suggests they finish eating first. Then he'll show Lyra the capital before taking him to the academy. He offers to be his tour guide until it's time for Lyra to go hunting. Elsewhere, the members of John's guild are chatting amongst themselves while their leader, Hyung, is on his way out. Rien wishes him a fun time leveling up, and Seisuke says he'll see him soon. After Hyung leaves, the guild leader comments that he's incredibly stubborn, and Sasuke agrees. Rien pulls up a chair, sits down and says he'd like to talk. He asks Sasuke if anyone's nearby, with his detection skills activated. Sasuke carefully scans the area. He checks every corner and every nearby house. With the scan complete, he confirms that no one is around. Smiling, Rien remarks, "That's excellent. Very few can hide from Sasuke's detection skills." From Sasuke's detection skills. Then Ryan asks if Sasuke has noticed anything. He replies, "Yes." Looking at Leia's picture on the table, Sasuke remarks that the young sharpshooter's equipment
is different.
but his physique and weapon match the photo, confirming it's the same person. Certain that it's him, Sasuke confirms that the protagonist is indeed at level 25. However, he adds that he couldn't get any other information on Rien. He asks if Sasuke couldn't even see the young man's stats. He questions, "You couldn't even see his status, the sharpshooters, marksman's." Sasuke replies that Leia is no longer a beginner. He then inquires about Leia's achievements, but Sasuke couldn't access those either. The leader concludes that it's just as he suspected. He thinks about the mages and says they did an excellent job covering him up. He wonders if they're grooming Leia for their own benefit, with a sinister expression. He curses them, looking directly at Sasuke. Yoan asked if the mages approached the protagonist, knowing he was Kei's cousin, and if they were planning to train him to get information. About Dion. Or to infiltrate the guild. Sasuke admits he's not sure. He grinds his teeth in frustration. Rand remarks that he already knew that. The question was rhetorical after all, but he admits to being annoyed. He's frustrated that he can't figure out Leia and Sasuke's intentions. However, he reveals he managed to see the young sharpshooter's title. This piques Ryan's curiosity. He asks what the title is. Sasuke replies that Lyra is using the title. The one who knows no fear. The leader asks about the effect of the title. Sasuke explains that it increases attack damage, and it can only be obtained by defeating a monster. 20 levels higher than your own level. This leaves Rhea deep in thought. Then he comments that the Ram magicians are really valuing the protagonist, saying that they left the last hit for him. Rian imagines that Lyra is being recruited by them. He also assumes that only a Korean could be playing as a musketeer at that level, so it couldn't be anyone other than the young sharpshooter. While talking with Sasuke, he suggested the magicians approached Lyra to take care of him. But Sasuke believes they haven't fully joined forces yet, and remembers that the protagonist was at level 12 when he left the Castle of Light a few days ago, and emphasizes that Lyra wasn't hunting, but merely traveling to the capital. However, he questions how Lyra has already reached level 25, and how he's wearing multiple pieces of equipment from the field boss. He claims this should be impossible without the support of mages. He considers the possibility of a curse. Sasuke, however, asks if Lyra couldn't have defeated the boss single-handedly. He then slams his hand on the table and yells at Sasuke to stop being an idiot. He tells him not to be so naive. He asks how someone at level 12 could possibly defeat the Agony Bear alone. Furthermore, Ren recalls that Sasuke couldn't access the protagonist's stats or his achievements or skills. This leads him to believe the mages used the concealment item on Lyra while ranting and raving. He claims the mages gave the protagonist all the items from the Agony Bear, and that Lyra is involved in a scheme with the Ham sisters, the ones who are camped south of Hellstock, until they recently defeated the field boss. Furious, he kicks the leg of his chair and orders Sasuke to inform Kai to keep an eye on the Ham sisters. He adds that Sasuke must also help him with location control. Pointing at Sasuke, Ryan reminds him to regularly use items so that Lyra can't see his position on the friends list. He admits the musketeer might know where he is, but she'll never be able to track Sasuke. Naked, they begin to teleport. During the process, Ran asks his ally how he's feeling, and if he's coming across as friendly. Sasuke replies that he thinks he seems like a good person. The boss, suspicious, looks at Sasuke and tells him not to lie. This causes the young man to fall silent for a moment. Then they hug, and the boss laughs and tells him to move on to another place. Somewhere else, John comments, surprised, that Lyra has a map that costs 5 gold pieces. Meanwhile, the protagonist studies the locations of the weapons shop and the warehouse. Someone asks, how long are you going to stare at that map? The protagonist explains that this is basic intel for a sniper, because he always needs to be
aware of his surroundings.
He then calls out to Lyra, telling him to follow. He'll show him where the academy is. The protagonist then asks if his cousin
has thought about what he said.
Earlier, as they walk, John asks if it's something related to the Holy Grail quest. Or something like that. He mentions that when he reached level 100, he had already completed all the quests in the starting city. But he'd never heard of that one specifically. Lyra asks if he really went back to the starting city. After reaching level 100, John replies that the lunchbox was never sold, but that he also never heard anyone talk about it. Which leaves the protagonist confused. John wonders if, even if someone had received the quest earlier, they wouldn't have just eaten the lunchbox. The protagonist becomes pensive. He remembers searching for the restaurant. Holy Grail all over the map, but he couldn't find it. He starts to believe that John's hypothesis, well, is correct. No one must have completed the quest, because most people probably ate the lunchbox. Then he remembers his conversation with Madame Roux. When she mentioned that he could still play without worrying about the invitation to the grand opening, or losing familiarity with the NPCs. She explained that many players thought they didn't need to return to the Castle of Light, since the capital offered so many quests to help him regain his familiarity. The protagonist asks if completing the quest would unlock a second shop or change the capital's map. John says he doesn't believe anyone has ever actually finished that quest. He then asks the protagonist if he knows why he's currently at level 198. He explains that eating the lunchbox,
it would be like jumping straight to level 202.
John also mentions that even if someone hunted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for an entire week in real life, they wouldn't be able to gain 2 levels. This makes the protagonist question if it's really that difficult. John then explains that leveling up isn't easy, especially for high-level players, since for them time is money. He claims that eating the lunchbox is the equivalent of saving 100 days of playtime in Middle-earth. He suggests that Lyra simply sell the lunchbox. The protagonist, however, remains thoughtful as the day goes on. John comments that it would be stupid to eat the lunchbox just to gain 4 levels, and that it doesn't make sense to save it until level 200. He argues that selling it would bring in a lot of money, more than Lyra could ever imagine. This makes the protagonist think and consider that his cousin might be right. If he sells it for the right price, he could not only cover the cost of his surgery, but also significantly help his mother. Jong suggests introducing Lyra to some of the best players in South Korea through the guild master, and tells him to leave the rest to luck. With a smile on his face, the protagonist accepts his cousin's proposal.